You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 468, the Book of Boba Fett 1 year later episode. A time tradition here on the Cantina Cast where we go back and take a look at a series or movie or other piece of content 1 year later to see just how well it held up. And did it age the way we thought it was going to? Is there anything in here that has changed our minds a year later now that we've had additional Star Wars content or just a long time to sleep on it? All that will be discussed and discovered here and more. And joining me tonight is none other than Jonesy, sporting your episode 9. What is that, beanie hat thing that we got at Celebration?
Yeah, the beanie hat from Celebration.
Yeah, beanie hat from Celebration.
2019, yeah. Long time
I know,
ago.
that feels like forever, and it probably was at this point. But how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Actually, it's pretty telling because we got this winter storm that's coming across the U.S. here in a couple of days. And when we were in Chicago, we basically had a winter storm while we were waiting for this preview. So that was, the timing is pretty apropos.
Yeah. I just thought about that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's...
Yeah, now I'm excited to talk about this tonight because it was a very, it was an experience I was not looking forward to and was not looking forward to it while it was happening, and then actually maybe enjoyed it by the end of it. So it'll be an interesting conversation tonight.
It's a happy ending. A happily ever after.
Let's not get crazy.
Yeah. And speaking of happily ever afters, making her debut as the official first episode that she is a full-fledged member of the Cantina Cast, Lauren Stringer's with us. Lauren, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
You look so festive. I don't know what it is. Is there something going on there in the decorations? Anything? No?
No, I think this is just the first time that you're seeing all of my books. So maybe that's what it is.
Maybe that's it. It's the background change.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is like one of those where you zoom in and figure all the stuff that's behind her because she's got so many different things behind
her. I know,
her.
like now it's distracting. Like I can't, I want to see what some of that stuff is. You know what? Let's go ahead and scrap the show. We'll just zoom in on her background.
I'll just do show and tell for the entire time.
Yeah, for an hour and a half. That's right.
But if you're listening to the show and you have no idea what we're talking about, we actually do a live cast every time we do this. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. 10 subscribers away, by the way, from 1,000.
Yeah, we've only got 10. I saw that. We've got 990, and once we get to 1,000, it opens up some, I don't know, magical vault of YouTube goodies or something that happens there. But yeah, if you're not already a member.
No, it doesn't.
Nothing happens? Okay.
Well, not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Yeah. We got some other covenants that we've got to hit still.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about news, because I had that in the news, but it's pretty light. But again, if you've not had a chance to go sub to the channel, please do so. We'd love to have your support there. And I don't know, there's just something magical about the 1,000 number. But in another news, Jonesy, what else? What happened this past week here?
Yeah, Mark Thompson actually earlier this evening, this is Tuesday, December 20th, tweeted that he had been nominated for a Voice Arts Award. So this is for audiobook narration for Fallen Star by Claudia Gray. And this is actually really, go out there and read his tweet. Yeah, he's Captain Ehud on Twitter. And because this is right before he went into the hospital. And so it was a very interesting and difficult time. And so it was really, he has an interesting perspective on what this book means and kind of coming in and out of it. And again, to be recognized for his performance. And of course, he could be recognized for every book that he's performing in because he's fantastic as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Whether you like the material or not, or you kind of like the voice, just the pure talent of the people that do audiobooks is just amazing to me because they are switching between these characters. And I think I actually saw there was another podcast that had him on their show along with someone else talking about the process, which I thought was pretty cool, which is something we definitely need to do for After Dark episode at some point. We need to see if Mark will come onto the show and do something with us.
Yeah, I think he'd be game. But that's, I think
it would be too.
Yeah, kudos to him. That's, I know it's probably going to go unnoticed in the grand scheme of awards and all of that. But, people that are close to Star Wars and close to these types of awards, it's a pretty big deal. And somebody like Mark Thompson he's already a legend, right, in terms of voice acting and the books that he does. So good.
Absolutely.
Kudos to him for that. Okay, so let's see. In other news, So there are a couple things that are kind of circulating right now in the. I was going to say the rumor mill. They're not necessarily rumor mill. I guess they're officially confirmed. Let me back up. They're not officially confirmed, but they're legit kind of spoilers, rumors. And one piece that we can probably talk about is this picture of Jude Law that's circulating right now. There's been a
Right.
picture of him in Skeleton Crew, which is an upcoming series this year, next year, I guess 2023, that we'll be privy to. But have you guys had a chance to look at this image and without spoilers? Because I'm sure they'll release the official. It seems like it's going to be an official still at some point release. But if you had a chance to look at it in, I don't know, a couple words, one word, what was like your thoughts seeing the picture? And Lauren, I'll go to you first since I heard you're a Jude Law fan.
Well, it's different than the one that I sent you earlier from the holiday. So I
Oh
did
yes, that's
confirm
not the
that.
same.
I looked at the real one.
What did you think when you saw it though?
I mean, like, for me, I couldn't really I mean, I don't know if there's even really any spoilers to be seen in it because I couldn't get a lot of information from it other than what I expect the tone of the show to be like.
Hmm.
Um, but even from that alone, it had me interested.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, a couple things. So one, I believe this is from a Disney Plus promo.
yeah. I think
So
so.
so it's just kind of a flashing screen. So I wouldn't call it spoiler necessarily, but I really just have one thought: not a Jedi, not a Jedi,
Not a Jedi.
not a Jedi.
Yeah, not a Jedi. And based on his look, I think for me, it already kind of like it like set up a couple of theories that we've kind of talked about, and it closed the door
Right.
on several that we'd already speculated on.
Yeah, I mean, granted, I joked in the show notes. I was like, commence 45-minute breakdown because hey, that's
Yeah,
who we are, right?
right.
So
Yeah,
I mean, that's what we do. But there's not much here. It's literally a picture of him wearing certain clothes. If you'd like to go check it out, it is out there. You can go find it in all the normal places. Star Wars Leaks on Reddit. It's on all the other spoiler websites. Be careful if you go out there though, because there's usually other stuff that goes with it. But it's also in all of the other legit. Well, I say legit. I'm not demeaning them, but all the kind of the normal media posts as well. So
yeah.
it's not hard to find this one at all. But you can go out there and look at it. You'll see why I'm saying not a Jedi. Not really spoilers. There's nothing really there, but just him in an outfit in the dark.
Okay, that's enough. Hello,
Looking
you're going to spoil
skewered.
it.
Oh, did I? Okay, my bad.
Well, and even with outfits alone, like, I mean, that's not really even enough to go off of either, because sometimes people will be wearing disguises or things like that. So I feel like it could
That's a good
still
point.
go in any direction.
Yeah, look at Obi-Wan Kenobi in the series, right? What he was wearing wasn't exactly Jedi garb, it was trying to look like refugee garb, basically.
Hmm. Yeah, they all dress like Jedi, which is still bizarre to me, but okay. All right, let's.
Actually, if you look at the fabric, it looks very
Here we
Tuscan-like.
go. Okay, enough of this. Let's move on to something else.
Maybe he was saved by Tuscans too.
Maybe he was too. Man, that was such a great. Okay, I'll save it for
Yeah,
the
we'll
save it
get
for the
into
show.
that later.
Yeah, we'll get to the main show here. Okay, Lauren, you've got some news on Jedi Novel Archive. You dropped a new episode here recently.
So I did release my review of Convergence. So that has been posted on the Cantina Cast channel. And I'm in the process of reading Quest for the Hidden City. So I'm really excited to post that review too. So that one's coming up soon.
All right, so I don't know. We haven't really talked about spoilers here. We're probably not gonna. I don't want to take anything away from the review. So if you get a chance, go out there, see Lauren's review. I've had a chance to watch it. I know where she stands. Of course, I've talked to her before, and so she's telling the truth. It lines up with everything she told me before she did the show. So in case you're wondering, but that's out there. Please take a look at it and support all those incoming videos. But I think you did a good job, honestly, covering it for anybody that really wants to decide whether or not this is something for them. I think the way I would capture it is if you're already invested in like the High Republic and especially Phase 2, it's kind of like a no-brainer. You're going to read it. But I think you make some good points for somebody that may be on the fence or looking to dip their toes into the High Republic. So.
Right. And our Patreon on the show is going to do a 2020 look back and a bit of a look forward on 2023. So that plus Battle of Jeddah as well, the audio drama that's about to drop as well. And we've got a preview copy we've started to listen to. Pretty solid stuff, pretty good stuff. So you'll want to check out the Patreon episode this week. We might talk a little bit about those things at some high levels.
Just maybe. Just maybe.
Maybe. It's possible.
It is possible.
You know what else is possible, Albert?
What is?
This show is possible because of our Patreon members, and just want a huge shout out to a couple of new early access subscribers, Ronald White and Matthew Maher. Thank you so much for signing up. And also, Justin McFall leveled up to the green milk tier as well. So huge thanks to Justin. And then, of course, a massive thank you to all of our now part of the tribe members, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin. Man, my stuff got cut off. Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, and Isabella. And then Delusions of Grandeur, Rod, Kathy, and Hard Countered. Thank you all so much for joining us on the Patreon channel. We hope you enjoy the content. If you're curious, check it out. CantinaCast.com/Patreon will get you all the details. Most of the exclusive content starts at just the $2 tier. But if you just want early access to the main show, that's just $1 as well. If you just want to say thanks or tell us you like the show, that's cool. But otherwise, if you want a chance to get on the show, look at some of the other tiers. Pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, and there's a whole catalog of Cantina Radio episodes out there. And Lauren, do you want to tell us what Cantina Radio is? Because I know you're a huge fan of that show.
Cantina Radio is an excellently curated playlist by Albert Padilla.
Oh.
Wait, did you actually listen to it?
No.
Oh, okay. But hey, all right.
But that is the word on the street. That is the reputation that it has.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
No, so yeah.
Let me do a real plug for a Patreon that I'm about to post. I do this every holiday year. It's a holiday tradition at the Cantina Cast where I repost Mike Rondo reading Chewie and the Porgs with sound effects and everything else. Not sanctioned by Disney Publishing at all, but really did an amazing job. Like, people read their kids like this story to go to bed. It's proven. It happens. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
So this will be going out this week. I will be posting a link to it so everybody can enjoy that. So if you just want to check out Mike reading this book with sound effects and everything else and saying pork potty like a Rhode Islander, which is worth the price of admission alone.
It is.
You want to check out Patreon this week because it's going to be out there. So cantinacast.com/Patreon.
You know, some people kind of during the holidays play Christmas music and sing Christmas carols and all that. We here enjoy listening to Chewie and the Porgs, read by Mike Rondo, which is wonderful and fantastic.
By Michael Schnicht. Read for you by Michael Rondo.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Good stuff. Thanks for doing that. I'd forgotten about that, but thankfully you're...
Oh, I never forget this.
All right. Okay, with that, let's talk about our main show, The Book of Boba Fett, 1 year later. All right, so the way I kind of positioned this show is I thought we would just kind of do our traditional opening thoughts, and then if you've ever listened to any one of these shows, it's really just kind of discussing what worked, what didn't, you know, what aged well, what didn't, et cetera, et cetera. During the course of watching The Book of Boba Fett and doing show coverage, we were kind of doing the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? The good was something we thought worked really well for this show, for the episode. The bad was something that didn't really sit with us or didn't resonate with us or wasn't our cup of tea for whatever reason. And the ugly was just kind of like some funny, trivial thing that may have come up. And man, were there a lot of them for me in this series. But I thought we could also do some of that here in just a little bit. But Jonesy, I'll start with you. I know going into this, like we all talked about this last week, and I think we were all kind of snickering, thinking, oh boy, now we're coming off of Andor, right? Incredible television series. Just happens to be set in Star Wars land. And then thinking about the Book of Boba Fett, and I was getting mixed feelings thinking, man, I don't know how this is going to go. Like, am I going to just be trashing this the entire time? But thankfully, I don't think that was the case for all of us. Well, me and you, Jonesy, anyways. But Jonesy, what did you think about the series now that you had a chance to sit down with it? And as a follow-up question to it, had you watched any of the episodes prior to the homework assignment ahead of the show?
All right. So the answer to the last one was yes, because we had the Patreon show ranking all the Disney Plus shows for 2022, or actually all of, not just 2022, but all the Disney Plus shows. Right. So I had done a little sampling here and there, but I was not excited to go back and rewatch this series because I thought it was going to be a bit painful. Now, I will say this. The first few episodes were actually a little bit difficult to get through still, more so than the original time. The things I liked about it, about those few episodes, felt more shallow this time around, unfortunately. But the stuff that I really liked in the second half of the season was really strong still, and still really, really good. So it was kind of a tale of two. And I think we had this initial reaction when we did the initial reviews or the reviews of the shows, whatever it was for each episode, where it just felt like two different pieces of content. And was it Book of Boba Fett? And so I thought about that throughout the series of like, is this really Book of Boba Fett? And I kept leaning back to yes, kind of, but they went too far in some areas for it to remain Book of Boba Fett, like for him specifically. There were a lot of storylines you needed to have in order to fill in the gaps of where people would be. So I was like, okay, that makes sense why we've spent so much time with Mandalorian in some ways. But then other times I was like, okay, no, they just went way too far down that rabbit hole because they didn't have any other idea of how back to go and backfill some of that stuff. And it was so good. That was the hard part, is that it diminished everything else that came before it. And just, to me, it was a very different show once Din Djarin shows up. So, but no, it was overall, it was a little bit better than I remembered it. I did enjoy it, like especially once it got rolling by, Return of the Mandalorian and Cobb Vanth, and Cobb Vanth, of course, were always really great. But so overall, better than what I expected, but a little worse than I remembered on a couple of pieces. We'll talk about them because it's probably going to be rubbing negatively with how you view it.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, like, we're all so caught up in the moment when these series are live, right? We're all caught up in the hype. We talk about this stuff. We dissect it 10 ways to whatever. And it's easy for us to get kind of mixed up in that. And so I think that's why it's important that we do these kinds of shows, that we do have kind of like this retrospective look, especially now that, again, a number of other shows have aired and we've got I'm going to call it a clearer picture of what the future looks like. Because I think a lot of what was really had me scratching my head as we were watching this series live now makes sense. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense in, like, I understand what they're doing more. I don't know if it still makes sense to your point in the narrative of Boba Fett, right? And I think that's the point you're trying to make.
Right.
Like, does it still make sense to him? I don't know. That's really hard to argue.
Well, I think when we get Mandalorian season 3, it's going to be really telling to see how well does this fit in with the broader narrative in general. But we'll talk a little bit more throughout the show tonight, though.
And so, Lauren, obviously you weren't here as a member of the show when we were going through the first series.
But you went back and watched all 55 hours of that content before.
Did you really? That's amazing. So what did you think of the think of the did we do 50 hours? Oh, we probably did. What did you think about the series, having rewatched it, and had you seen it prior to, this week?
Well, this was the first time that I rewatched it all in a chunk. So, like, before this, I had just watched it one a week. And so during the rewatch, it was much more glaring to me this time around how much ground we are covering in how short of a period of time. We only had 7 episodes, which is crazy to me when I went back and saw that there was only 7, because at the time it felt like more.
Yeah, right.
Because of how many plots they started up. And so it's just covering so much ground in that period of time that when I was watching it this time around all in a row, I was kind of like, "Oh my goodness, like how are they going to handle all of these things in only 7 episodes?"
Yeah. And I guess they do. That's a good point. I have it in my notes. I have dense as one of the comments that I was making as I was watching it, because they do lay down so many things, and I think they do a pretty good job, right or wrong. I think they do a good job of, like, just wrapping stuff up and we're moving on to the next one, right? We're not going to dwell on it. We're not going to give you a whole lot here. Some things went unwrapped, which still ticks me off to no end. But you're right. I mean, it was just kind of this, not to coin a phrase in one of the episodes, but it was a moving train that, ends with, again, that whole just mind-boggling piece of the Mando coming in. And now you see by the episode 7, you're like, okay, well, we need Mando here for some of the more obvious reasons. But did we need to spend those 2 episodes, primarily 2 episodes, strictly on him without any mention of Boba Fett? And we just kind of dropped that whole narrative piece.
And on Grogu without him there too, with him and Luke. I mean, a whole nother aspect of it too.
Yeah, no, good points. I think for me, so I enjoyed this series. Like, I was with you. Like, I was a little timid, Jonesy, about going back and watching it, because I'm so still, like, reeling over how incredible Andor was from everything, right? The production, the acting, the writing, all the stuff that we've constantly talked about in the episodes as we were covering them. All of that stuff is such a high bar. And when I thought about the Book of Boba Fett, I remember thinking, like, I really like that series, but is it because it was just kind of happening and it felt like it was me playing with my action figures, like 20 years ago or more. So that's what I was thinking the entire time. Going back and having watched it now, beginning to end, number one, it did feel dense. Number two, I actually enjoyed it. Like I wouldn't say I enjoyed it any more, but I really did enjoy it. Like there were certain things like, okay, I can. It felt like two personalities. I guess is what I have
Yes.
in my notes. Right, there was two different personalities, and you can throw Obi-Wan Kenobi in this as well. And I think this is probably going to be par for course. I think every one of these series is going to have its own unique personality, although they're all rooted in Star Wars. This era of post George Lucas and Disney, we've got so many other people now that are kind of contributing that at its core, I still feel like a Star Wars, which has to happen. But then you've got people with their own takes and visions and that sort of thing. And so, what I was really seeing in this series is somebody like John Favreau, somebody like Robert Rodriguez, who are known to kind of be, I'm gonna say, over the top. That's probably not the best. That's probably not a fair word, but the tones and the personality were just larger than life, right? We had these like larger than life characters, and I think that makes sense given we had Mando and Luke and Ahsoka and Boba Fett and Fennec Shan. These characters are all bigger than life, and then when you look at somebody like Andor, yeah, we had the big players in there, but it was just a different kind of DNA in terms of it. So I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, on one hand, I was thinking it's probably not going to be fair to compare them, and now I feel like it really isn't fair to compare them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, especially when you look at the writing. I mean, some of the writing, like, so Fennec Shand is one of my highlights of the series as well. But if you listen to some of the dialogue, it's like when they're in the sanctuary after Garsa Fwip's been blown up and she's recounting everything we just saw. I'm like, man, Tony, can you come in and like clean some of this up, please?
Mm,
Like, just give us a little bit better dialogue, you know? And that was persistent a bit early on in the season too. But it's things like that where I think that's the difficult part that I had a hard time with comparing with Andor was that the writing was so good, like start to finish, with really very few gaps in that. That coming back to this more adventure-based storytelling and maybe lighter emphasis on dialogue, where some of it was really, really good, by the way, but not maybe as consistently good or consistently solid or kind of what we would got from Andor in many ways. Yeah, that was a bit of a difficult transition to make coming right off of the heels of that show.
yeah. So, and by the way, I forgot to mention. So we have the good, the bad, and the ugly in the show notes, but I also added the beautiful, which is a new category that I've added, and all it says is Jennifer Beals. Enough said. So we can talk about her now, or we can wait, but definitely a standout for me personally. Okay, with that, let's talk about.
You are on your own.
Oh, come on. All right, let's talk about the good stuff first. Let's talk about the good, like kind of what
Yeah.
worked. Lauren, I'll start with you. Is I was trying to think of how to do this. Honestly, I'm struggling because I was thinking maybe we pull out the Mando episodes because they almost feel like their own entity. But it's fine. Just give it to us all. Give us all whatever. Give us a couple of your goods or things that really stood out for you that were worked well or held up well since a year later.
Yeah, I did look at the Mando stuff as a separate show. So my biggest good was the Tuscan plot. I really could have had a whole season of just really getting deeper into that because I loved that so much. Like seeing the Tuscan culture, getting a little deeper into that, seeing the relationship between Boba Fett and the Tuscan warrior build up and how eventually they took him as part of the community and kind of seeing him grow in that way. I thought that was excellent. And it was a new perspective on the Tuscans that up until this point we hadn't gotten to see in this way. So that was something
Hmm.
unique it was bringing and something special in the show, and I would have loved to have seen more of it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the highlight. I'll just to steal yours. Like that was one of my goods as well. Like it's so sad. Like I felt sad after that second episode because I remembered that after that whole line was just dropped. And I remember watching the series the first time and we were talking about it. We were like, I was still holding on to it, right? I was still thinking, okay, they're coming back. Like the Tuscans are going to be and especially when you think about the novels, the Empire's End and what the heck's the name of that? The first one I always
Aftermath.
Aftermath series. In the Aftermath series, there is some the Cobb Vanth stuff, right? They do call in the Tuscan Raiders, and the Raiders kind of show up and kind of save the day. And I'm thinking, oh man, they've leveraged this perfect. He's walked away. They get to that last episode, and they're like, man, if we don't get the people from Freetown here, then we're done skis. Like it's not going to happen. I'm thinking this is perfect. Like they're setting this up for the Sand People to suddenly ride in on Banthas and save everybody, and it never happened. And that was one of the ones I felt like just got dropped. And so for me, it was a good, but it was also a bad because never went anywhere other than that second episode. How did you feel, Jonesy, about that? And then maybe if you could throw in one of your goods as well.
Yeah, if I talk too much about the first 3 episodes, it's going to go more negative quickly. But I like the aspect of the Tuscans. I think the part that fell short for me though is that it was just for as much time as we spent in these flashbacks or this back to dream sequence type of thing.
hmm
And the story inconsistencies are just still there, though. I mean, but I like that I like the vision quest. I've always found that really appealing, like the draws to Native American type of culture
Yeah.
and those type of things as well. I like the dance at the end when he's welcomed back into the tribe is still probably my favorite moment
Oh,
from those first 3 episodes.
such a
It was
good
just
moment.
so yeah, so powerful. And again, I remember when we did the original episode in the original review of it, it was just I didn't see it coming. I didn't know what it was. It was like a fighting technique, right? And when they start doing it around the fire and everybody joins in, it's just really, really powerful stuff,
hmm
and really like that aspect of the show. It was, I think at the time we talked a lot about, lingering more there, but I was actually surprised how much time we did spend there. And I was trying to remember, I was like, I think we actually complained a little bit about this too, of not enough, not enough establishing what's going on in the real world, in the real timeline or in the now, and spending a lot of time in the past. And so by the time we get to when we need to be in the now and everything starts to snowball and really pick up the pace, we feel like we've been left behind a little bit. Like there was a lot of other things that didn't have enough time to develop. I think this is a difference between the success we saw of a 12 episode season with a 7 episode season as well, right?
Mm.
And so given that time to really develop and take your time with the characters and allow us more development opportunities where it didn't feel so rushed, because I think timing was another thing of how do we keep how do we have this? How do we have a concept of time, of how much time has passed, right? But anyway, but again, that was probably my favorite scene of all of that. But I think there were a number of good scenes in there, good moments in there in particular, and them setting up the Nikto riders and things like that. I thought were solid. If we kind of expected them to play out the way that we did with the pikes and everything by the end of it, not really a surprise, but still, that they took out his family and things like that. But
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit more about some of that stuff in my bad.
Well, so the other part that I had in here for me on the good with regards to the Tuscan Raiders is, and I know this isn't lost on anybody. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but I think I was personally surprised by how much it worked better in the second viewing a year later, and that is it. We had to dedicate the first 2 episodes, and we had to dedicate all that time into the flashbacks, right or wrong, I think, because they were really trying to say this is a different person. It culminates in that whole vision quest and all the symbolism that we talked about with regards to the tree and breaking free and all the sins of the past and the red eyes. All that stuff is there, saying, okay, everything that you knew about Boba Fett is from this day forward is completely gone. It's in the past. He's a totally different person. And there are moments throughout the series where it kind of comes back to it. Either he's talking about the Tuscan Raiders and how much they change. I think at one point he says, everybody needs a tribe, right? And kind of reflecting on, okay, I'm no longer this, a single individual, all about myself kind of person, bounty hunter. This is more about family kind of things. And, we get the Cobb Vanth line a little bit later about, hey, you've gotten soft in your old age, and he says that happens to all of us, kind of thing. So I think they were kind of harking back to that and saying, okay, he's changed, he changed. And I know a lot of people really felt like that was one of the problems with the series, is that this wasn't the original Boba Fett. This wasn't the Boba Fett that we kind of grew up enamored with, because he was the most deadliest guy or bounty hunter in the galaxy or whatever. But yeah, for whatever reason, I felt like having watched it this second time, and maybe it was just because I was really into that Tuscan tribe, Tuscan Raider kind of storyline. It just did feel like it matured a little bit better for me, and I kind of understood, and it was easier for me to break away from the idea that this really isn't the same Boba Fett. Not that I had a problem with it, but I think it reinforced it a little bit harder for me, or maybe it just worked better the second time around.
I'm gonna have to challenge that a little bit. I want Lauren's perspective on this one because
Oh, yeah, you're a tiebreaker, by the way. So just
I don't.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
welcome, Lauren. Did you really feel like Boba Fett had changed all that much? Because he still wants to be a crime boss. I mean, he says it himself. He's a crime boss. So did Boba Fett actually change a whole lot, except maybe not being the cold-blooded mercenary that he was previously? But do you really think he changed all that much?
Well, what I got from it was it was easy for me to understand that yes, he has changed. However, getting to wanting to be crime boss, that portion of it, I did not feel like I saw any demonstration of that, like, of that plan that he had. It sort of, to me, felt like he decided to be daimyo at the last minute, whereas, yes, the Tuscans changed him, but how did that go from now wanting to overthrow Bib Fortuna? That connection was something that I felt I was missing.
Yeah, we talked about that too. Like we were still struggling with like, how does this make sense for Boba Fett? Like, why of all things does he want it? Like, he wants to separate himself from who he was, but now he's taken this position, living amongst these gangsters, and then he's got like this heart of gold now, right? He's like looking out for his people. You know, he wants to walk through the streets. You know, he wants to quote rule with respect, which is not something that's very synonymous with a crime lord or a daimo. I mean, some of the stuff it didn't. I get what you're saying. It doesn't really line up. I think, and maybe I'm trying to think if this is what we came to a conclusion with, but at least as I was watching this at the very end, like that last shot where they've got Chrysanthemum and they're eating the fruit and whatever the heck's going on there. I mean, it was kind of clear that they were painting the picture that this is his family, right? That's his tribe, love it or hate him. Those are the people that we're going to see going forward. But I don't know that I was completely convinced that he's going to stick around. Like, I think it was a temporary thing. He felt obligated to do so, but I don't know. Maybe the events of this series have changed him. And so when we see him in Mando 3 or wherever we see him again, I don't know. I could see him moving on past this and saying, this is not for me. Maybe he puts somebody else in charge or, allows that place to flourish, or maybe Cobb Vanth is running things. I don't know. I just don't know that I didn't get the sense that he was completely sold on that. This is where Boba Fett's going to be from now on. He is going to be the new Jabba Hutt, but just ruling with respect.
Yeah, he didn't really know what to do with people's respect at the very end of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it almost felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I get it. It's been, decades of your life, really since he was born and bred, of being feared, or being, being on the hunt, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I could tell we're a little uncomfortable, a little different. Again, yeah, he was showing that withdrawal from it of, I don't know if this is really what I want to do. This isn't really meant for us, and, Fennec's really, I think Fennec's kind of the hero of this series anyway, in some respects. She's the one giving him the hard advice, the really difficult advice of like saying, no, if you did it this way, things probably would have gone a whole lot better. Like, especially all the BS with the mayor, like that they taught. Oh gosh, sorry, that's gonna be the ugly.
Stick to the good, because we're gonna talk about Mayor McCheese here in a little bit.
Yeah, Mayor McCheese.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but no, so Fennec, I liked Chrysanthemum and a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah.
And again, just the presence of him. Yeah, there were some really comical type of moments, with how they decided to film the character a couple of different times, but just the presence of Chrysanthemum was really cool. I love that he came out of the comic books and came into a show. Actually felt like the comics actually had a little respect for 5 seconds. When we know really they don't.
When they don't. Yep. No.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate. I had a conversation about this yesterday. But that was really cool for him to be such a part of that, kind of that journey as well.
Lauren, what about you? Characters that did any other characters make your good list?
Yes, the Bantha made my good list. I loved the Bantha. So cute. Oh, that was just adorable. So I would like to see that Bantha again in season 2.
That was, see, Jonesy? She looked at you, like stared you down the entire time she said that.
Or the Bantha babies.
How
They'll
did
make
you
Bantha
not
babies.
like the Bantha? It was so sweet. It was his companion when he had nobody else.
It's not a carnivore.
Okay, that's the problem that I have with it. Okay, like clearly his teeth are made for like chewing grass, and yet he fed him beef or whatever, some meat it was. So he doesn't have carnivorous teeth.
Yes, that is an issue. I agree, but I don't think there was any other food around. So I guess
True.
that's better than the Bantha starving to death.
Well, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
What do Banthas eat?
Huh?
What do Banthas eat?
Sand, I guess. There's nothing else around
Yeah,
in
I was
Tatooine.
just about to say, I don't know what else.
They're like, and that's the part that felt like cruel and unusual. He's like, go make Bantha babies. I'm like, what is this dude gonna do? He can't do anything. There's nothing to eat. You're gonna send her off in the middle of the desert. It's gonna take her 50 years to get to the nearest town because they walk about half a mile a second, right? So,
Well, there was a herd of banthas that we saw briefly, like it was like in an establishing shot at one point. So there's got to be some other wild banthas out there somewhere.
yeah, but I don't know, like, what's the culture like for banthas? Is he just like, hey guys, saw you over here eating sand, thought maybe you could use another member? I mean, I don't know what that looks like, but it's got to be awkward for to be a lone bantha.
Maybe they have a good sense of community, kind of like elephants do.
Maybe they do. They've got to. I hope they do for sure.
Okay, so all of our good so far, we've just been talking about the first half of the season.
I have
I got
another
more.
good from the second half.
Should we talk about the second half of the season?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
go for it.
we can. Yeah, as long as let's stick to the characters for now. You have another one, like a real one, Lauren? I'm kidding.
Character that was a real one. Character
I
from
know
the
it
second
was.
half of the season, Luke. That was awesome. That was a good. Getting to see Luke in any capacity makes me excited. So
Always positive.
Yeah, Peli Motto was pretty amazing.
love her.
Actually, she was really funny though, and like her, I still love the used car salesman like tactics that she pulled on Mando. I just thought that was really entertaining. I just found it funny.
She's
and
great. I love Amy Sedaris so much.
So I like Amy Sedaris. I don't know that I like her in this role so much. I mean, she's like, when I look at my ugly, it's full of Peli Motto moments. Okay, I'm just telling you right now.
Wow.
Spoiler alert.
Oh no.
But we'll get to that here. I had Black Chrysanthemum in there as a positive. I had the Major Domo as a character that stood out for me, like aged well. Like I just loved his comedic timing throughout all of this, and knowing more than he likes to lead on, and everybody knowing that he knows more than he's leading on. I thought that all worked really well.
I think Mando in the armor.
Well, okay.
I mean, those
Yeah.
moments are making, again, just I guess maybe more story than character, but I thought Mando in general, like the character that he brought into all of this, and the nature and it was very true to the character, I think, but also added a lot to the story. It kind of saved it, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
Not only saved the day, but just kind of gave it some character all of a sudden. The show felt a little flat for a while, and then Mandalorian came in, and it just felt more dynamic.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and again, we were a little curious about why he was so aggressive at the very beginning. It seemed a little out of character when he chops a dude in half. But whatever, we'll get past that.
Yeah.
But again, the backstory with the Darksaber, the challenge with Vizsla, those types of things were really, I mean, they were so important for us to get. It's like, when else would you get them? And for us to understand, him getting discharged from the tribe, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So we know Mandalorian's also kind of looking for a home, right? Or looking to, I mean, he wants to atone, but a lot of story and development there, a lot of turmoil for what he's going through with Grogu as well, and interactions with all these characters. He's kind of the hub all of a sudden of interactions with Grogu and with Ahsoka, and some of those moments were just really, really solid, of where tough decisions, right? How badly he wants to see Grogu, but not able, knowing it's not the right decision to, because it will set Grogu back, and that having to make that sacrifice. We talk a lot about sacrifice these days and things you're willing to give up, and getting rid of that relationship, or not allowing that relationship to continue, because he knows it's what's best for him, is really difficult, and difficult to let that go, but tough decisions sometimes.
Yeah, I had Mando down, obviously. I mean, he's such like you said, it's a breath of fresh air, because it does, that series, even though he comes in, episode 5, right? Yeah.
Right.
So we're only 4 episodes in, but like after the first 2 episodes, that 3 and 4, it's a little weary at times for me. Like it's good. It's okay, but it's just not for me personally. It wasn't of the caliber of the first 2, and it certainly isn't anything like the next, like 5 and 6, which is almost Mando exclusively. So I had him in there as certainly as a highlight. I don't think we talk enough about the ship, which I don't know. I think we were calling it the Razor Wing, whatever that ship is going to be called.
You call it. You say that we call it the Razor Wing.
I call it.
You call it the Razor Wing.
Yeah, okay. Albert calls it the Razor Wing. Jonesy is yet to be named.
Actually, I have called it the Razor Wing.
Okay.
I've adopted your moniker
Thank
for
you.
it. So,
and Lauren, she's contractually obligated to say Razor Wing, so she doesn't have a choice in this.
I prefer to call it
She's like,
Baby
"What's
in the
a Razor
Bubble.
I have that down as one of my favorite moments too. A little bit later, the baby in the
Survey
bubble.
says we'll accept
We'll
it.
accept it. So I think that's, as a character, right, as a replacement for the Razor Crest. I think that's great. We haven't talked about Cobb Vanth or Cad Bane, Cad effing Bane. Sorry, to be proper. I don't know. What did you? So Jonesy, I want to go to you just because I know you had some minor quirks or issues with the voice syncing with Corey Burton, because Corey Burton does provide the voice, although the actor that's playing Cad Bane is somebody completely different. Did that stick out to you? Did you even remember that was happening? How did you feel about it second time?
I guess I don't remember making that comment. No, I didn't have any problems with it, because Corey Burton's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, the differences with the look of Cad Bane, did not bother me at all.
Yeah.
I think they still work. They still captured the facial expressions, I think, really well, you know. And again, for someone wearing a costume and wearing a mask, I think they did a fantastic job. And anytime he's in the scene, it's just everything just gets more intense. I mean, everybody tenses up. Cobb Vanth tenses up. Boba Fett gets all worked up. You know, he's just a threat every time he walks in the room or is in the streets, right?
Yeah.
And so I really like that interaction with him. I like that Cobb Vanth was still very, you know, he was very consistent with what we had from Mandalorian. He still wasn't on board with everything. Just, you know, oh, hey, my buddy's here. I'll do whatever I want. He's like, no, this is not what these people want. You know, and so he still gets that, right? So I think he was still true to character, and the way that they wrote the character was still worked perfectly for him. But he also had the experience of saying, you know, something this isn't sustainable. Like we are going to have to evolve. We're gonna have to do something, you know. But what is it that we can do about it? And so I like those characters a lot. I think they worked really, really well. It helped give a different dynamic too of not only how do we get the town folk and all of that involved, but just that we're all connected, and what happens here is going to happen somewhere else if you just give it time.
Yeah. Right. It's the whole Phantom Menace symbiotic relationship. What happens to you happens to them kind of thing.
Right.
So, Lauren, for you, I mean, you know, Cobb Vanth's hair product notwithstanding, because it's amazing that it's able to withstand the extreme heat of Tatooine. Timothy Oliphant and his portrayal of Cobb Vanth, and especially now that you look back to the Aftermath trilogy, how did you feel about that? His character portrayal.
Yeah, I think his character portrayal is totally spot on, and I love how when you can tell how protective he is of his town, even though we don't get a ton of time with him, but that still really comes through in those scenes very strongly.
No, I think we said it as much when we covered it. I wasn't really, he was in what was it, Deadwood? Was that the series that he was in?
Yeah, I believe
Something like
so.
that, where he was kind of like this. It was a Western theme thing, and that all carried over. I would agree. Like, he's very consistent in terms of his characters. He's a very pragmatic kind of leader that sometimes we don't see that a lot. I think in Star Wars, everybody just kind of shoots from the hip, or they're running in, chivalrously trying to save people, and he's like, no, that's not what we're about. Like, we've got our own thing, and we're kind of sticking to our own out here. So that all seems to hold true. I think we left at season 1, or I guess the Book of Boba Fett. Should there be a season 2? But the Book of Boba Fett, we left that thinking he's still alive. I think we went and played that scene back when Cobb Vanth shoots him. I'm sorry. Yeah. Cobb Vanth shoots him. No. Cad Bane shoots Cobb Vanth. It's not a mortal wound that we can tell, although he doesn't show up in the finale. I still would like to see him pop up in Mando season 3 or in some other series. Like, I think he's done such a good job, Timothy Oliphant, with the character. I think they've established him as somebody who is a hero. He is another one of these gems that comes from the novels, right? And buried in the novels. He's not even like part of the main story. He's one of these side story kind of characters. But that portrayal and what Book of Boba Fett did for him and Mando did for him has really pumped a lot of life into him. So I'm really looking forward. I hope we get to see him in something else. I just don't know where he lines up with, I guess, going forward in the upcoming series. It seemed like Rangers of the New Republic would have been like a good fit for him in some way.
Had a lot of potential at the very least. Yeah.
But that kind of got scrapped. Okay, I guess we can just wrap up here on the good. Is there anything else? Anything on your? I mean, I've got a billion things. So I'm not going to go through all mine. But is there anything that just is hot on your list that you want to talk about that was a good for you before we get into the bads? Okay, I've got one. No, I have Luke's. Just want to mention 2 things. I will teach you to protect yourself. I didn't catch that, but well, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to. But when Luke says that to Baby Yoda, Grogu, now it hits differently because of Tales of the Jedi, right? When Anakin tells Ahsoka, the best way I can protect you is how to teach you how to protect yourself, kind of thing. It was almost like, I don't know. Again, I don't know if that was planned. It's Filoni. He was what. So, by the way, Jon Favreau wrote all of these episodes with the exception of this particular episode, which is the what is that, number 6? No, yeah, 6. From the Desert Comes a Stranger. That was Filoni writing that as well, and so it could be that he intentionally used a variation of this line when he was writing Tales of the Jedi, that in particular the Ahsoka episode. But
you don't know about Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni has just one script that he pulls everything from and just does variations. Yeah, just does little variations of it. Yeah.
But I mean, I was the I was the meme, the Leonardo DiCaprio meme, like pointing at it going, that's the line. I just recognize it. Okay, so I want to mention that. I did enjoy Luke's training. I mean, I liked it the first time around, but for whatever reason, it just stood out more for me. Whether it was him, running around with him on his back and doing flips and, calling back to Empire, all that hit then, but for whatever reason, it just did it again more. I did enjoy the deep fake as well. Like it
Yeah, it
felt like
still
it
held up
was,
pretty well.
yeah. I mean, felt like it's still not like where we are now, but that technology has been growing almost by the month. Like it gets better and better. So I can't wait to see what we see or what we get in future iterations of him or other characters that he bring back. And then the last thing is just the baby in the bubble, right? That very last scene about, okay, but this is the last time, and then tapping on the window and then punching it, which also makes my bad because you end the entire series called the Book of Boba Fett with Mando and Grogu, but more on that here in just a little bit later.
Well, handing off to the next.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. It's really a transition. Okay, so now that I've rambled on, did you guys have anything else before we go to the bad?
I was gonna say, the first time I watched this, when Luke has Grogu on his back, it did make me tear up. It was like, because it was just so spot on. I just love seeing that again.
No, it is. You can't help but it evokes all the memories and the images of Empire. Let's talk about the bad. I don't have a very long list here, personally. Believe it or not, I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing or bad thing. But so let me just pull the Band-Aid off on this one, although because we've already talked about it. It's not really pulling the Band-Aid off. It's more like, I don't know, cleaning the wound. The tie back for the Tusken Raiders. Like I just wish they would have come back to that. It feels like it would, for me. It just hit so hard. It was I was invested all of the characters. The warrior. We've got questions about whether or not she lived. In my head, she lived. I know some people have gone on and said, "Oh, she's in the frame, and it's clear that she died." The little boy that dies, right? That whole scene with him, on the funeral pyre there, burning the bodies and all that. I mean, it's just so powerful. And then we don't come back to any of it. And I get, again, the reason why I think is because that's what he needed to go through in order to be this new person that he is. He had to have that loss, and which kind of sucks for me because I hate when they do that. Like, there's other reasons people become who they are other than just mass, homicide or
They seem to be
whatever.
hitting that really hard with Star Wars. Like every single series, we have to prove Vader's belief to be accurate.
Yeah.
We have to deal with loss before you can really accomplish anything in life.
Yeah, and
It's wearing on me a little bit too.
yeah,
I'll
and
be
I
honest
get
with
I
you.
get it from a storytelling perspective. I think it's powerful, right? But I mean, come on, Star Wars. This is like we do this every time. The same thing we do with these powerful like women characters. Like they just keep repeating like, oh, we're gonna kill this person off for the sake of killing it because it did well last time. And okay, yeah, but there are other stories out there, right? We give us some good there with the bad if you have to.
And it's often brutally as well, which adds another level of frustration for me. I would like to see some more creative storytelling in that way rather than just going back to that same formula of killing off either a bunch of people, like in the case of the Tuscans, or a key person like a love interest or something like that, just to, I don't know, as a way to put the protagonist through something. There's other
Right.
ways to put them through things.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But so Lauren, since you're going here, what else did you have on your bad list?
Yeah, so my bad, so a big part of it, just building off of what you said, was I almost wish that we could have just had the first season go back in time and really actually spend some time on the Tuscan plot rather than having it be like this flashback going back and forth. Because I think with the placement of the flashbacks, it's easy to get kind of confused about where we're at in terms of where Boba is and what's going on at the same time. It's kind of hard to keep it all straight with how it's set up. That was part of it. But my bigger bad, I can sum up a lot of my smaller issues with one thing, which is that there were too many plot threads started and we didn't get very deeply into any of them. I felt like a lot of them were very just like, we hit it in a very surface level way, hit a couple of highlights, closed it up, or in some cases didn't close it up, and then move on to the next plot.
Hmm.
And we're talking about some things that they really could have dug deeply into, like the thing with the Pikes, the thing with having a corrupt mayor, the thing with the biker gang. Like you could pick any one of those things and really actually get deeper into it and actually explore it in a real way. And I think it would have helped with pacing, and it would have helped us not feel like there were so many loose ends by the time we got to the finale.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of I hadn't really considered some of those. And now thinking, I mean, again, not that this is the bar, but think about something like Andor, where they did take their time and
No, it's the bar.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I mean, they took their time and they explored some of those things, and I don't know, like maybe it's because I mean, again, for me, I know you guys said it, but I just want to hit it hard a little bit harder. Like it was shocking. I thought I thought there was more than 7. I mean, call me stupid, but I was thinking, oh, it's 10. And I was thinking, oh, I got 10 episodes to watch. Oh, I can do it, whatever. And I get in there, I'm like, well, crap. There's only 7, and I know 2 of these are not even have anything to do with Boba Fett. So to your point, like there was plenty there to kind of work through. I don't think they had the time, and I don't know which came first. Right? Was it we're going to do this in 6, and it turned into 7, or did they say, we're going to do this in 12? And then they said, no, let's cut that back to 7 or 6 and said, well, crap, we're going to have to tie up some loose ends and we're not going to spend any time on this. So I don't know if that's part of this whole, part of the formula or what went into the development of this series, but it does feel like something happened there, or it was just an oversight and they just felt like, no, this is enough. It's enough to get the story moving, which I guess worked, but to your point, would have been better had they spent more time.
And yeah, and it's kind of like what we were saying earlier about how there were some episodes that were dragging a little bit, or it was harder to get more engaged in those episodes. And I think that if appropriate time had been spent on some of these plot threads rather than switching gears and going to Mando, we would have felt more engaged because the setup would have been there and the beats that we would have needed to see happening throughout the show would have been happening.
Jonesy, what about you? What did you think? I guess in terms of the threads, if you want to comment on that, or did you have anything adjacent to that in some of your bad here?
It's actually pretty consistent. It's consistency and depth. I mean, you had the way that they set up the backstory. I just wish, well, I wish, like I have any control of this, but it would have been nice for them to be a bit more streamlined because, like Lauren was saying, you had a really difficult time understanding how, like, how much time had passed. Where are we actually at? Where is your place? What else is going on while you're sequestered off, right? And again, not important for the character, but important for the viewer to understand where we're falling in all of this, to understand where we're fitting. Unfortunately, they have working against them is that we know this era pretty well, and they're stepping into another era with The Mandalorian that we also know really well. And so by filling in those gaps, but by going back and forth, and the consistency is specifically a problem for me because how much time they spent in the back to tank, looking back on the flashbacks, was disproportionate from the time that they were spending in the current time frame to understand and establish what was going on, right? So without that grounding, all of the things that come later feel super rushed. They feel like they're out of place. They feel like you didn't really have any time. Like, do they mean as much to you?
Mm-hmm.
Or you can ask, well, but why this or why? You can poke so many different holes in it. I think some of it I get a little nitpicky on, like Boba Fett's speech, which I know is very good. Of they took me as one of their own. They made me one of their tribe.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Well, no, dude, they captured you. They made you a slave. They beat you, and the only reason why you got it was you had to single-handedly strangle a sand beast, with chains.
Mm.
That's the only reason why you were part of the tribe. They didn't take you in. It wasn't some altruistic type of thing.
Yeah.
Little inconsistent in that regard, but I mean, it's mostly, I think, just mostly the timing and the development, the way that they positioned the episodes and the way that they structured them. Like it didn't make when you look at, and again, I'm really sorry we keep going back to Andor, but when you think about it, we did complain about Andor with editing about maybe jumping a little too much. This one didn't jump enough. If you're gonna do flashbacks, you have to break them into smaller chunks, so it doesn't feel like we're lodged in that environment. Because then you are, and then if you don't get far enough, well, how are we going to get back there? And then unfortunately, we came back to basically Boba Fett getting injured. Well, take me back to the tank, and then we go right back into the dream sequence, which just seems super convenient at that point, right?
Mm.
And it just didn't give us enough depth as to what was going on. Like, if we were going to talk about how Boba Fett has changed, let's linger on now. I mean, I understand that we're seeing the transitional period, but I didn't get enough of it now to actually prove to me that he was any different than what he'd always been, except he expected to be able to just sit on the throne, collect the cash, be a crime boss and not really do anything. I mean, that's kind of
Yeah.
what it seemed like to me, right?
So
I mean, and maybe that was the plan. Maybe that was his plan. But anyway, so that was some of the consistency stuff that just didn't make it didn't jive with what I thought I was watching. Not what I was expecting, but
Yeah.
just what I thought I was watching. It just didn't feel quite right.
okay, so completely unfair and an oversimplification of all of this, but do you think, let's say they stretch this thing out to 12 episodes, Jonesy? Do you think 12 episodes would have been enough to kind of dive into some of this stuff, close up some gaps, give us more context, right? All of that stuff. Do you think that would have fixed the problems here?
With a caveat, and it's a big caveat. With better writing, yes, it
Okay.
would have.
That's fair.
I think.
Lauren, what
I
about
don't
you?
think
Think
that-
it was just length? Do you think we
Yeah.
just needed 5 more episodes to kind of help?
I definitely think length would have helped. But
I don't know about 5 episodes, but
yeah, I think length plus don't open so many plot threads at one time. I think that would have helped it feel more focused on what we're actually needing to explore here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, which stories do you want to tell? And I think that goes straight to the writing of having a really clear idea of what you're trying to do. And I think they had an idea of the pattern, but maybe not necessarily. I don't want to criticize writing too much because it's a skill I don't really have. But I mean, it just didn't feel like there was enough there that they. I don't know. I'll just stop there.
Well,
The writing fell short for me in some ways. I think more from a developmental aspect of
Yeah.
things.
And so I say 7 episodes. Really, it's 5, right? I mean, most of the stuff we've been, at least what we've talked about so far, the things that we felt like they didn't dive into further, they could have given us more exposition on, whatever. Those all happened before we get to the before we get to the Mandalorian episodes, right? So really think about it. We're only talking about 5 episodes, cramming everything into 5 episodes. So, would 5 additional ones link this or stretch us out to 12, really 10 because 2 are dedicated to Mando? Yeah, I think it probably would have helped. I don't think it would have hurt. Yeah, I think you have a very good caveat point, right? It's all about the writing. We've seen that so many times with Star Wars in general, whether it's comic books, novels, television, movies, whatever it is, the writing still has to be there. And so you check that box. I think extending this to 12 episodes or even more would have been great. I think it would have done really well for the series. But I want to go to the chat just quickly. So Jennifer, and I don't know if that was intentional or somebody was just holding down the space bar there. But it says, I'm wondering if all of the plot is not done yet. I'm watching the Defender series right now, and it seems that some of the season's plots are not finished, but it comes together later. And I think we were pretty conscious of this when we were covering these episodes. We were kind of saying the same thing, like, just give it time. I think we've said that a lot when it comes to Dave Filoni because we've seen him plant things in one series and pop up later. You get resolution in a totally different series, but more consistently, he will put something in a season or at the very beginning of the season, and by the end of the season, you get the payoff. So because Filoni's not involved in this, it is Favreau. I would say he's probably of the same ilk and of the cut from the same cloth. So I think you're right. I think there's some things that we will see. I think some things may come back. Who knows? We could get Tusken Raiders at some point. I don't think we're going to, but there are other things that could still pop up. I just don't know where they're going to pop up. That's the problem because we don't have an official book 2 of Boba Fett, or we have no reason to believe he's going to be a primary character in The Mandalorian. And then how does all this stuff fit into that? I don't think it does, right? That's going to be so heavily focused on Mandalore and bringing the tribes together and Bo-Katan and the sword and all that. So it's just, where does this pop up at? Where does it have the opportunity to kind of live and breathe elsewhere?
Well, and something else too for me I mean, yeah, some of these things could definitely get resolved in the future, which that would be great. Prove me wrong. That's awesome if that happens. But something for me that I feel like I needed to see sooner that I didn't see is a lot of these things we were being told as the viewer through dialogue. Like Boba Fett says, I've changed. Being with the Tuscans changed me, but we aren't really seeing things be demonstrated to show us as the viewer. And so that's something that
Great
I
point.
think more episodes, it would have given us more of an opportunity to have some of that demonstrated to us. So we as the viewer would actually believe it rather than a character having to tell it to us through dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think a great point of that is we haven't really talked about the mod gang, right? But I think we see some of that in playing in that one, the water, right, being too expensive, and there's no work or anything. We'll come for work for me, and they're just kind of on board with it all of a sudden. And it was like, okay, yeah, they're developing a bit of a relationship there, but it seemed like they were awfully. I mean, it just kind of all snapped into place really quickly and really easily. And I'm not saying that was unreasonable to get to that place, but there was no turmoil really.
Right.
Yeah, they argued in the streets, but there wasn't really that opportunity to develop in that conflict, right? And then resolve the conflict, over time or with trust or something like Lauren's saying. I really like that. I think that's very specifically what's kind of getting hung up in my head.
Yeah, and like you just brought up a really good example of like the whole water situation. That on its own, I feel like I was surprised that we weren't seeing more unrest as a result of the price gouging that was going on with water. I think they said
Right.
something.
We got one example, and that was
Yeah,
it.
I
Yeah.
think they said something like it was a month's wages for a week of water? I mean, wouldn't there that would be a revolt, I would think. That's insane. And we only see one instance of some people who are somewhat frustrated. But you would think that people would be going crazy over
Yeah.
this.
Exactly. Imagine if the chase scenes would go as fast as some of these plot lines go.
Stop it.
Just how good the chase scenes
That
would
would
have
have been
been
crazy.
if they could have kept up with the plot.
Okay, so no, that was a good one. But no, seriously,
Because that was bad too.
yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that one.
Okay.
So here's where when you said that, here's where my mind went. Think about, not to bring Tales of the Jedi back into this, but we're going to bring this back into it. Think about Tales of the Jedi. Think about what they were able to establish with really not much dialogue, just visually alone, in justice and how horrible that town had turned because of the lack of the senator, kind of covering them and taking care of them, right? Something like that. It doesn't have to be, I mean, it could be a visual thing. They don't have to spend a lot of time, but just something to kind of reinforce, like, hey, this is a big problem, because you're right. If it's a month's wages for a week's worth of water or whatever it is, and this guy's gouging, I mean, Boba Fett kind of makes a real quick remark about it, and then he kind of sets his foot down and says, well, if you're not going to lower your prices, then you're not doing business here in my sector or whatever. But I mean, it still didn't really hit hard. And I think that would have lent itself to us buying into, okay, these guys really do need a job because they can't afford water. But I don't know, they look fine. Their makeup was on point. They look pretty healthy. They were driving really
They've
expensive
got
vehicles.
expensive mods.
Yeah, they got mods all left and right. How are they affording these things?
So I'm gonna lay this at the director's feet a little bit, not the actors. But when I think of the Major Domo and I think of the Watermonger, the over the topness of how they're approaching the daimyo, and I get why they were maybe going that direction. I think it cheapened the seriousness of the situation because it was so over the top and almost comical, and maybe intentionally so. I don't know if that was actually on purpose to make it
Maybe
laughable,
but yeah.
But to me, it diminished. Like looking back and just kind of think of it as y'all were talking about it, it just diminished the seriousness of it. And to where you can't take the character seriously when he does run out there and gets all up in arms about it. You're like, yeah, you can tell he's pissed, but I don't really have anything invested in any of that stuff because he was kind of a clown. You knew he was taking advantage of him in the first place. Yeah, and so it was just
Right.
some of
And
that
then
type of
reinforced by the
thing.
fact that we don't get nothing else after that. It's like, we're done. We're moving on.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, and I know some people might be listening to this and be like, wow, you guys are getting really nitpicky. I think that's the story of Book of Boba Fett in some ways when I think it's about the bad, is that there were lots of little things that just weren't working very well. And they just added up. And then you had a few more, more egregious type of things that maybe didn't work. And they just kind of put it over the top. I think that's why when people view it in retrospect, they might think a bit more negatively about it than if they watched it. They were like, okay, it wasn't like there were a lot of good moments and great moments in this, but it leaves that kind of taste in your mouth because there were just so many things you could go and nitpick on. You're just like, it just takes away from it. For me, it was difficult to step away from all of that entirely like I'm normally able to do.
Yeah, and just a programming note, if anybody's tuning in, catching us on the live stream and dropping in and realizing we're talking negatively about the Book of Boba Fett, to be fair, we are doing the good, the bad, and the ugly. We've done now 45 minutes of the good, so you'll need to rewind or listen to that. But we're on the bad now, and then we're going to get to the ugly. But again, my bad is not very long, my list. And overall, I thought the series still holds up well. But we'll come back to that here, I guess, in our closing thoughts. Let's talk about the Mod Squad, because we've already picked at it, scratched the surface a little bit. It's in my bad. Like I feel like it even got worse. Like it's like, again, maybe it was, rose tinted glasses. And I mean, I was critical of it when it happened, but my goodness, like I'm not even talking about the colors. Like I think we came up with a good theory of, what did we say? We said in Coruscant, this is just speculation, conjecture. On Coruscant, the cool kids color their vehicles because they're posh and all that. And I think I said it was like small town living, right? If you ever grew up in a small town, you mimic a lot of what's happening in the big town because you're not over there. And so when you do, you want to dress like they do, drive the vehicles they drive at. And so that's how I was justifying. They've got these really tricked out Vespas with crazy colors that don't fit into the backdrop palette of something like Mos Espa or Tatooine, right? This desert kind of environment. But for them, that they stand out. And as kids, that's kind of what you want to do, right? You're trying to it's about self-identification and who
That's
you
the
are,
point.
right? Exploring all of that. So we were able to kind of justify it that way. So I'm not even talking about the colors. For me, it was about the freaking choreography, like the editing and just how slow these things were. Like I don't understand. I mean, maybe it's just the horsepower behind, but it just took a lot of the oomph out of it. Even the exciting speeder chase when Major Domo's in that car, speeder car, um, I, it was just like, yeah, it was not good. Like, and it felt like he was going 3 times as fast as they were, yet they were still on his tail the entire time. It was bad. I did not like that. It was hard to watch it. But Jonesy, what did you think?
No, Lauren, was there anything redeeming from those sequences?
Well, I will say the thing about the mods that I thought was cool was I actually did think that the subculture of them actually modifying their bodies, like, and it's set up kind of like a tattoo studio is set up. Like, I thought that was really cool.
Well,
How?
we're not talking about the good. We're past that. Sorry,
Oh, I
bad
was
on me
saying,
now.
okay, let me
I'm
be.
with
No, I'm
actually. I'm
Let me
with
kidding.
be
you. Like
I'm
negative.
kidding.
the idea of the mods and Thundercat and all that. Actually, I actually like that a
Yeah.
Well,
lot.
so and to be clear, so remember the mod squad, that is a throwback to something that was happening in England during the 60s, I think, right? And
Right.
Favreau was
Yep.
aware of this, right? That's why there's actually a real world event that happened or phenomenon or whatever it was, and that's why he's paying tribute to that. And I totally get that, but I don't know if
Yeah.
I don't think it landed. It stuck the landing the way I think because I didn't know about it until I mean I didn't know anything about it until I did the research and somebody brought it up or he said something on an interview. But then I'm like, okay, cool, but it still sucked for me. I mean, I hate to say that, but it didn't really land very well. But sorry, so you were going on, Lauren, about the bad there?
Yeah, I liked the actual using the machinery. I thought that was cool. But the bad about the mods, I agree with y'all about the chases being strangely slow. I will say those scenes actually I enjoyed them because I was laughing at the Major Domo. So there you go.
Okay,
he
you
just
turned your bad into a good.
he
Let's
just
turn that
cracks me
frown
up. I'm
upside down.
sorry.
No, it's fine. Do you want to pile on any more, Jonesy, on this, or do you think we've said our piece?
Well, yeah, I could start criticizing the acting a little bit too if we wanted to, but we'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean, I thought
They just didn't. I think overall, it just
yeah,
for whatever it was, there were some things that I think conceptually they worked. I think
Right.
the idea behind it. I liked the mod parlor. I liked that was how they we got the backstory on Fennec Shan, how she got better or how they fixed her.
Mhm.
So I thought those were really cool and important to see. And so I think the mods in general were a neat concept and that works. But they really, yeah, I mean, they just felt really, really flat and they felt really, really slow, and they just didn't. I'm sorry, like when I think muscle and I think numbers and everything, they kept saying, now we've got this and we've got that, but now we need foot soldiers. I'm like, no, you need a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are screwed,
Yeah. There was
So it was,
Mhm.
yeah.
So so Jennifer says they were worth the wait just for Thundercat alone. We haven't talked about
Thundercat was
Thundercat.
cool.
I actually had him in my good, but my
Yeah.
list was kind of long there. If anybody's not aware, Thundercat's a musician. He's also like a writer and a poet, does other things. But I mean, he's played with like suicidal tendencies and he's done a lot of bass work, R&B, blues, you name it.
Oh, he's very accomplished.
Yeah, very accomplished musician. So the fact that we got him in this series was pretty cool. Rob says the scooter felt like it should have been or had ragtime piano and a whistle.
It would have been more exciting if it was in black and white with like all of the scratches on the
I'm
film.
surprised no one said that. Agreed, Rob. It gave me Keystone Cops vibes, and that's from Jennifer as well. So I mean, come on. So like, Jonesy, you make a good point. So I know we're talking
The
about
rickshaw droid was faster than the damn scooters.
It
Just saying.
So the point of the mod squad is like I said at the very end, that establishing shot or that final establishing shot with him with Chrysanthemum and Fennec Shan, and they even brought the freaking mouse droid in there or whatever it was, not the mouse droid, but the rat catcher. Yeah. So that for whatever reason, like it or hate it, that's going to be his family. That's his tribe, So he had to have that, right? We get why they were there. I just, the execution of it all was just kind of a little rough. And I think where it really kind of reared its ugly head, no pun intended, was when they were attacking Chrysanthemum and they had all their weapons and stuff. Like there was like, it was very maybe this is knowing John Favreau was probably intentional, but if you watched any cartoon in the 80s where there was a team, right? Everybody had a different color. Everybody had a different kind of a weapon. They had their specialization. They had their own unique names. It was like right out of an 80s cartoon where they were coming together and they were pulling out their weapons that were of the same color and they were fighting the bad guy. It was very reminiscent of that for me. And, I don't know. I think Chrysanthemum should have just leveled every one of them. I don't understand how they stood a chance. Now, granted, Boba Fett came in and he was, chopping at the knees and taking him out there. But, I mean, come on. Chrysanthemum against a bunch of kids with, mods and all that. Nah, I don't know. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But, all right. What else do we got for the bad? Anybody want to jump in here on a couple more? I only got like 3 more here.
Go for it.
All right, so I will say I have this in my bad, but and it was one of my goods. The 1.5 episodes.
Those are opposite, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, just making sure.
It's the 1.5 episodes of Mando. Like it's a good because I loved every bit of it. It's a bad because I'm like, what is it doing in this series, right? Like, and
right.
I really struggled with this prior to coming on the air. Like, even up until the last minute, I'm still thinking, like, how am I going to justify this? Like, how would I spin this? And the only thing I can come up with, well, the only thing I can come up with is where would you have stuck this? Right? You're going if season 3 is already written and you know where you want to start, there is a large gap that needs to be filled. And I don't know where you would have landed this thing. You can't. I mean, they would have had to extended Mando further out, or it's its own series, or it's its own little, like, I don't know, movie, TV made movie or something. I don't know where it would be, but it's still, either way, I just find it odd that you stick this in something called the Book of Boba Fett. I think you and I, when we covered this, we justified it as saying, look, look at the Aftermath trilogy, right? It's a number of stories that are being told. And yes, there's a larger kind of narrative that runs across all 3 of the books, but then you have these side stories that are happening. And sometimes in books, you kind of stray away for a couple chapters and you kind of go into a place that's really not related. And then you realize, oh, it kind of is, tangentially kind of related, and it does play off of it. I mean, maybe they were kind of going with that approach, but it's just so night and day difference. It's stark difference in terms of the quality of it, the level of energy that gets escalated once Mando comes in, and then we get like the armorer in there. We get this amazing backstory on Mandalore, and we get to see it for the first time. All of this happens in a series called The Book of Boba Fett, and it just feels like it stands out, like, for all the good and for all the bad. So enough of that. But Jonesy, what did you think on that?
I think that was very much it. I mean, you needed some of this, I think, right? So I think that it was there in the first place doesn't really set wrong with me. It makes sense that you break away in order to get you caught up, because I completely agree with you that where would you have done this? Because you would have had to focus some episodes and you had to wait a whole nother, I don't know, over a year, right, before you're going to get anything Mandalorian based. So you had to have some way of doing it all. But how long they dragged, kind of not dragged it, but how much they had to do in that. And then they had to go and bring Grogu back as well. It was just, we were away for so long. And all of that is missed opportunity on the Boba Fett front of saying, okay, how do we make this story, a bit more compelling and a bit more sensical and a little deeper? And it was all at the expense. I mean, that was at the expense of the Mandalorian stuff, which was amazing, which was really, really good. And that's so unfortunate that it overshadows the opportunity that you had with the rest of the series. And I think that's the part that really, I think, hurts the series overall, was the Mandalorian stuff, because we felt like we had to cram all that stuff in there over the course of almost 2 entire episodes. All to make sure that Grogu would come back to help save the day with the Rancor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and all of these things, and just kind of start feeling really convenient if everything shows up, at the right time. And, it was just, yeah, if we felt like we sacrificed Book of Boba Fett so that we could make Boba Fett work. It was really odd.
Yeah, it's so I guess, Lauren, where did you land with this? Because in a way, I guess the way we're summarizing is they use this series as a vessel to kind of reunite Grogu and Mando, right? They left at the end of season 2, and a lot of us are thinking, man, how are they going to get back together? I don't think any of us were expecting them to be reunited in this series. And to Jonesy's point, again, it felt like another matter of convenience that, oh, Mando just happens to be on Tatooine. And, oh, by the way, there's a skirmish that's going on Tatooine that Boba Fett needs his help for. And so, oh, look at this perfect opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. How did you feel about, I guess, those episodes? And was it a bad for you? Like, I know a lot of people said this is the best thing that happened in the series, you know?
Yeah, it's hard for me to put it in a bad because seeing Mando and Grogu and Luke, that's hard for me to complain about that. Like I was especially thinking that we weren't going to see them for a much longer time than when we did
Hmm.
see them. But it is harder for me to justify when it comes to thinking about the time that we needed for Boba Fett's story and that we lost that to them. I almost wish that with Grogu and Mando and kinda Grogu doing the training with Luke and then making the decision and going back to Mando. That's again, I keep coming back to the same thing of we're covering a lot of ground in too short of a time. Those are some big decisions and some big things that were happening that I think we could have spent more time on. We almost could have spent half a season on what's Grogu's decision gonna be instead of having it be in, like, 2 scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that felt super rushed. Yeah.
Yeah, especially because it's a big decision. It's not like he was just trying out being a Jedi. He had been doing it for what, almost 50 years? So
Right.
Right. Well, and if we remember, like the Luke Skywalker caught a lot of flack for this. Again, this is not Luke, and again, it's. I don't think it was necessarily this is who Luke Skywalker is, or he's take it or leave it type of guy, or the situation was just that we didn't have time to really see it develop to where it didn't feel like he was just that Grogu had the opportunity and that he had seen more of Grogu over time. We don't know how much time has gone by. And so those things feel even that storyline felt very rushed because we we got to hurry and get back. We're running out of time. If we would have had 10 episodes, some of these things may have been able to breathe a little bit more.
Yeah, I remember that. There was a lot of discourse at the time around Luke just putting Grogu in that position. Like, how dare he make this child make a decision about, which parent or which love or whatever, make a choice in that way. It's much more nuanced than that, I think is what we're saying. And we just didn't really get a time to kind of see where that decision process went in for him. I mean, and I could argue also that it's a kid and you give a kid two choices, they don't think about things, right? They're probably going to act on impulse. And I think for Grogu, again, I'm putting way more into this than they gave us, right? But I'm trying to justify how he would make a decision so quickly, even if it's off screen. A kid's going to pick something and he's going to go with his heart, right? That's dad. I've got a relationship with him. I'm not even going to think about this. I don't know who Yoda is. This lightsaber is kind of cool, but do I really need it? That all could have happened. I think the point that we're trying to make though is that this is something they could have spent more time on. I still go back to, is the Book of Boba Fett, was this the right vessel for them to kind of explore all of that? Because I don't think it is. And two, they didn't, if it was, they should have given him more time to do so because it did feel rushed. And again, it did feel like another matter of convenience that this stuff would happen. Um, this question that Jennifer threw in the chat, she says, I'm wondering how confused people may be if they did not watch this series. I was going to put this in here as in one of my opening thoughts as well. And the more I thought about it, I thought, well, yes, there are probably some people that the Book of Boba Fett was like their first entry into Star Wars. I feel sorry for those people because that point's well taken. Like, how would you even know what is happening when you get to episode 5? Like, suddenly this guy in a meat locker walks in wearing armor. I would think you're probably
With the coolest music ever.
it's a pretty cool scene. It's him and Shadow, right? And getting to use that the dark saber. But yeah, it's a good point. This series was, and I have this in the show notes. I have this at the very bottom. It says, "Who was this? What was the intent of the series? Who's it for?" Because I don't think anybody. I think this is really about. This series was for everybody that's been following the Mandalorian, and anybody who's a fan of Star Wars or already in Star Wars and knows who Boba Fett is and all of that. If you're not any of those things, then I don't know if you should be watching this. But enough on that. So okay, so we were talking about the Luke stuff, and yeah, don't get me wrong. Again, the Luke stuff it was so deep and it was so rich, and there were so many things to explore, and I hope they do explore those at some point. I think we will do that when we get to Mando season 3. I think they're setting up a lot of that for it. It's just unfortunate in some ways that this had to happen in the Book of Boba Fett. Okay, so one of my other bads was the final scene being not part of the Book of Boba Fett, which is really just a transitional scene, I think, right? That's the only way I think you can justify it is, okay, we've closed proverbial chapter on Book of Boba Fett, and now he's got his tribe, and that story is going to be determined. But we're setting you up for the next series, which is coming out, which is The Mandalorian. And oh, look, here they are finally riding together in the ship. He's in that little bubble space that everybody knew he was going to go into, and we talked about it for a week before he actually showed up in it. And we got the cute moment of, okay, this is the last time thing, right? And we get him squealing and all that. Boy, the baby in the bubble.
That scene should have been the credit scene. I think that would have worked better.
Yeah, like a post-credits.
Traditional way.
Yeah.
And then bring the Cobb Vanth one forward, instead of that being the credit scene. I think that would have made a lot more sense.
Right. No, I'm with you there. Okay, so here's my only other bad, and I'm going to take a lot of heat for this because I've already taken heat for it. So if you have any problems, just send an email to mike@eargluemedia.com. I'll put it up on the online there for you to see it. But Ahsoka, I'm still not sold. Like I'm not happy about it. I'm a little unpleased with myself, but like having watched season 7, because we just covered this and we were covering this just recently, and plus Tales of the Jedi now, right? Seeing Ahsoka, Ashley Eckstein's portrayal of that character just through voice only, and her mannerisms, the way her inflection, her tone, I can't get over Rosario Dawson. Like I don't think it's a bad portrayal of her character. It's certainly different for me, but like it just doesn't. I don't know, man. I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't get on board with it. Like it's not working, and it's not even the visuals. Like I said, I put all the Luku behind me. No pun intended there. All that stuff, the costume and the design. I can get past all of that, but it's just something about her voice, the way she laughs, some of the things that she says doesn't sound like Ashley. And maybe it's because all we really focus on is I don't know. That's not true. That's not fair. I was gonna say all we really do is focus on the voice because it's a voice actor doing it. But the mannerisms, I mean, the animation is so good now that there are certain mannerisms that Ahsoka has, and I can see her trying to mimic those, but it's just not the same. I don't know what it is. So I don't know. Somebody tell me wrong, but I'm still not a fan of Ahsoka. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about that.
Laura needs to take this one.
Well, I like she did this, which I appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the voice, Ashley Eckstein's voice is so distinctive for me that
iconic.
Yeah, that when I'm watching it, I do kind of have to convince myself that this is Ahsoka. Like I'm almost reminding myself this is Ahsoka in my brain. I'm hoping that with time that goes away and that I'm able to just immerse myself in Rosario Dawson's portrayal, and appreciate the value that brings. But yeah, the voice I am attached to the original voice.
Jonesy?
There's nothing really I can add to that. It's different. It's very different. She's trying. I mean, she's hitting the notes that she needs to hit, I think, but it's still, man, it's difficult. I mean, we're not far enough removed from it, and like you said, Ashley Eckstein's just iconic, and with the voice and everything. I think some of it is the casualness of some of Ahsoka's conversations.
That's a good point.
And
yeah,
whatnot.
I've noticed that. Yep.
I think the way that Ashley's portrayal of Ahsoka tended to be a bit more serious, especially as the seasons went on and as we got into Rebels. And whether or not that's a fair assessment or not, because they're at different stages of life, of course, is kind of up to your interpretation on it. But I agree. I think the look is there enough. I think the mannerisms are there enough, but is it clicking? Is it connecting? And I think a lot of people, it's kind of a no. So I'm really curious how the Ahsoka series goes. And to Lauren's point about whether or not that's going to change our perspective on it, because we will have focused amount of content and a lot of time with Ahsoka and with Rosario Dawson. I'm trying to make sure I don't sound like Mike. Rosario Dawson, or something like that. But yeah, like make sure that when we do have a lot of time, whether does our opinion start to change? Do we start to feel like, okay, yeah, she's Ahsoka. It's a different Ahsoka, but it definitely feels like Ahsoka. It does feel like the same character, just at a different stage of life or something.
I don't want to sound trivial either. I don't want to sound like superficial. Like it's more than just the voice. Like I get it. Two totally different actresses, but here's I was just thinking about it. We've gotten so many episodes of Ahsoka, and Ashley Eckstein has given us a wide range of emotions. Every emotion you can possibly think of. And even I got what you're saying. Like this is a different time in her life, right? She's a little bit more lax. She's no longer under the the stress of the dark cloud or light cloud or whatever it is that used to be the Jedi. She's no longer that. She's made peace with who she is, and so she's a little bit more casual now. She's a little bit more laid back. I get that. Okay, what I'm saying is because Ashley Eckstein has given us so many ranges of emotion for that character, even in her older ages, I feel like there's already kind of a set pattern for what that's supposed to feel like and sound like, and it's probably not fair at all. I get that, for me to say, here's what you need to hit, and you've got to hit this because this is the bar. But I think because she doesn't do that, I think I'm like what Lauren said. Like you said it well. I feel like the entire time I'm watching her on screen, I have to keep telling myself, it's Ahsoka. It's Ahsoka. It really is Ahsoka. And I shouldn't do that. Like I don't do that with Boba Fett, right? I don't, even though I know that wasn't him who portrayed him, and I know that when I hear his voice, for me, I still hear the original voice from Empire before they went and redubbed everything with Tamora Morrison's voice. But I've been able to move past a lot of that stuff. I just am, for whatever reason, I think it's Rebels, honestly. I think it's because Rebels is such near and dear to my heart, and I know what that character is like in Rebels, that I'm stuck on this. That's not Ahsoka, but it is Ahsoka, and I have to tell you.
Let me throw this out to you guys. We don't know who Ahsoka is or what drives her right now. And I'm wondering if this is part of the problem with Ahsoka, is that we just don't know what is her drive right now? What is she? We haven't heard her come out and say it. We've heard her when she would talk to the magistrate, with her saying, "Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn?" So we get kind of an allusion to it, but she hasn't come out and firmly said, "This is what I believe in. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm trying to do. These are my goals. This is what I'm spending all my time focusing on." She feels very superb. She's just kind of out and about, and it doesn't have a lot of focus. And I think when I was listening to you talk through it, I was like, man, what is it? What is it? What is it? And I was like, I just don't know. I don't know what her purpose is right now. I don't know. They're not setting her up for really anything. We thought we were setting up for her in Mandalorian. Then we get this, and it's all of a sudden, well, no, she's just kind of hanging out with Luke, and then Luke's pining over her. Hey, can we go out to dinner later?
No, well, that's a good point.
Will I ever see you again?
Yeah.
Please? I'm lonely.
Will I ever see you again? I mean, he echoes Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. Did you ever find my dad cute? Or no? Okay.
No.
Is it weird? Yes, it's weird.
That is not what I got.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. No.
I know. I'm kidding.
You were scaring me.
But I mean, the deal.
No,
right. Well, kind of. I mean, Luke's lonely.
Oh, stop it.
There's no Mara. Well, we don't want Mara Jade.
Well, I think she's coming. Don't worry.
Okay. Anyway, but if you think about like that, do we know enough about Ahsoka to see? So maybe this characterization does work, but we don't know what her motivation is at this point to know if it works.
So, do we know her motivation? No. I mean, she's basically.
We think we do.
She's a retired fulcrum at this point, right?
Well, I'm looking for Ezra and
maybe
Sabine or something.
I mean, at some point we know she's going to look for Ezra, right? But what is the catalyst that spurs that?
Right.
Because there's a time. There's time lapse there. Sorry.
Yeah, and how did this moment sneak in all of that? Where she has time to just kind of chill.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll explore. I guarantee you they'll explore that. I can't guarantee that, but I can. Filoni is one of those people he's thought it all out, right? He's got all of this thought out, and whether he shows it or not, or whether he says it or not, is kind of up in the air. But I have a feeling there's a reason why Ahsoka is who she is, and she's not like on the hunt right now. For me, when I see, not to bring Rebels into this, but we're already there. When I see that last scene in Rebels where they like mount up and they're heading out to go find Ezra, some time has passed and something triggered that moment, right? They've been searching for years or maybe, and the trail's been cold, but there was something happened. There was a significant point that made them realize we got to get back in this and let's go find him, right? And so Ahsoka goes back to Sabine and she says, "We're getting in the shuttle, let's go," and they head off. So anyways, that's kind of where my head's at least from there. But going back to the portrayal though, I don't know. I mean, even if I don't know what her motivation is and what she's doing, I don't think that's enough for me to get past the inconsistency there where it doesn't take me out of it. Again, I'm not saying it's a bad portrayal. It's a different portrayal, but it does take me out of it because I'm consciously aware of it the entire time.
I'm curious how much conversation they had with Ashley Eckstein about that was a possibility. Because, I mean, you saw it work really well with Cat Bane. Voiceovers and stuff really work, right?
Yeah, and it seems like she would have been happy to do it just based on I mean, that's just
Oh,
my
sure.
feeling based on her presence that that she has.
But would a voiceover have worked though? Because I mean, it's not like you don't have all of the prosthetics and everything like a Cad Bane does. So if you don't have all of that and you try to do a voiceover, does that start to maybe not work as well though?
And because think about how much voiceover they would have to do. Like with Cad Bane, that was just a couple of scenes,
Right.
and with an entire show in which Ahsoka's the protagonist, I mean, that I can't even imagine. And then I could just see people critiquing the how well is it lining up or is that believable or
Right.
I could see that being a lot too I don't know. I could see that being a can of worms.
Right. Back to the chat. Dale says Ahsoka thinks that they found Thrawn, they found Ezra. I totally get that. I just wish that she would come out and say what it is she's doing. Well, like R2 called Ahsoka to intervene, I guess, with between Mandalorian and Grogu. I'm guessing he had kind of standing orders or whatever to do that. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I wish she would just come out and say it. Like, what the hell is she doing? Like, what is your like? I just want to know what her interests are. Like, what is her push? I mean, she can't just jump across the galaxy if she's actively pursuing Thrawn and Ezra, right? And anyway, not to belabor it a whole lot, but I just think that if we had that, it might help us a little bit. And maybe we would just see more of that development of what actually is going on besides her just being in action, and having some of that conversation about what's going on with Ahsoka. But then again, it's not an Ahsoka series. So maybe I'm doing this to myself here.
Well, and I
Um,
felt like putting her in Boba Fett, it just felt like really the only purpose that she was serving by being there was just reminding people that there's going to be an Ahsoka show. I wasn't really sure of why is she in this scene? Why is she necessary? And that context would have been helpful for me to understand that.
right. And of course, Steph asked the obvious question of why not just cast Ashley as Ahsoka? There was a lot of people that wanted that. Ashley, I think, wanted that quite a bit too. I think some of it was whether or not the body types and just the visuals of that, and also the physicalness of what was needed in the Mandalorian. Those things might have been concerns. I don't know. And I don't know. Do you really think Ashley looks a lot like Ahsoka? I mean,
I think
usually they
if
kind of
they
make them look like.
did If they did the whole outfit, with all of the makeup and everything, maybe. It's it's kinda hard to know without seeing it. I
Yeah.
do think Rosario probably, with the makeup and the outfit, she probably does look more like the character, but I think for me, I would have been so happy to see Ashley that I wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, exactly. I think if with the voice and everything, you kind of turn on its head though. Like, okay, these things work, but maybe these things don't work, and we're just having a different argument, I guess a bit. And I think that's to Dale had a question. Again, maybe she's not athletic enough to play the part. Again, you can work out and get in shape, but again, did all of the things work? KG came in. Hi, KG. Thank you for joining us tonight. And then Kay also says, I personally don't care much for Ahsoka camo in here. And again, what did it add? It was a barrier. That's cool. And then Jennifer bringing it in strong here, saying that oh, wait, that's not the one. She said she agreed with me. Where's the one where she agreed with me? Oh, there we go. I'm getting more of an older, edgy Gandalf that has seen a lot out of Ahsoka. I agree with Jonesy about Ahsoka, my new favorite. Albert did post in the chat, though, that he was just going on and on and on about Ahsoka. So we have continued his tradition of rambling on countlessly. He is trying to get back. Lauren, let's get to the ugly. Do you have any seriously ugly moments that we just have to get out of the way right now? Rip the Band-Aid off. What was it that just was an abomination to the Book of Boba Fett?
My ugly was Mayor McCheese because every time that someone said Mayor McChez, every time in my brain would go Mayor McCheese. And then I would start getting to thinking about why did they name him that? Is that really the best name that they could come up with is Mayor McCheese? Do they really love Mayor McCheese? Like I would have like a whole stream of consciousness thought process about Mayor McCheese and then be like, oh yeah, I need to pay attention to what I'm watching. And every time someone said his name, I would do that. So that is my ugly. I found it so distracting.
So it's funny, like, well, and I wish they would have enunciated better because I actually thought it was a cool name, Mayor Mok Shais, right? But a couple of characters really did just blurt it out to where it did sound like Mayor McCheese. And I get that was kind of the running joke behind it all, but yeah, I don't know. It was kind of, Albert, there he is. All right, cool. So we're talking about Mayor McCheese. We decided to go on and move on
I
to the
came in at
ugly.
the best time.
You did. So why don't you wax poetic about Mayor McCheese and how he's in the ugly?
Oh, I don't understand why he's in the ugly. This had to have been Lauren. Mayor McCheese, if you grew up in the 70s, like he's an iconic figure. Why would you not pay tribute to somebody as powerful and as enigmatic as like Mayor McCheese? Like he is a staple of the McDonald's playland growing up. So I don't understand what you're.
Well, here's the argument. I think Mayor McCheese would have been more interesting in this role.
Yeah, well, that may have been the case.
You missed my whole explanation, Albert. The reason is because every time they said Mayor McCheese, it would take me out of the story, and I would start having a whole thought process about Mayor McCheese and how I would start thinking about Mayor McCheese.
Yeah.
Like the actual Mayor McCheese.
And how bad she wanted a cheeseburger from McDonald's.
Get back into the story after sitting there thinking about Mayor McCheese.
I want a cheeseburger after the show. I'm going to go get a cheeseburger from McDonald's.
Here's a question though. KG just mentioned that. I never even noticed that. Okay. How many of you actually, and to be in full disclosure, I didn't know it until it was after the episode had aired, like the day after, right? And somebody posted it. I read it on Twitter and I went, holy crap, it's exactly what he's doing. And knowing Favreau, he did this intentionally. But so my question is, how many of us truthfully watched this and never gave it a second thought? Because I think he did a pretty good job of hiding Mayor McCheese under Mayor Mac Chayez or whatever his name is.
Chayez, yeah.
But until you knew, until you were tainted,
no
one gave
Mayor
it a second
McCheese.
thought.
No,
I just heard Mayor McCheese every time.
But to your point, now that you know, it does pull you out of it. And for some people, it's more than just a pull. It's like a yank right from the throat. But I get it. I do. I still don't think that's an ugly. My gosh.
So one of my uglies was Black Chrysanthemum's foot still. I'm still on this.
Oh, my goodness.
At one point,
let it go.
One point, it's like sideways being dragged around. And then, literally about 2 minutes later, a healthy jog, maybe a little bit of a limp, but a healthy jog. But that ankle was severely dislocated.
It was gone. But he pulled through.
I felt bad. I kind of felt bad because I was thinking about Kerry Jones and we kind of ran into him at Celebration. And I'm thinking, and maybe just the costume slipped off of him. And
his foot came out of it. And
his foot was like in the shin area of the costume.
Yeah.
And it was just dragging. It was just doing the best he could.
Yep.
And you probably can't feel the hole out in that hunk of thing that he's wearing,
Yeah, for anybody that didn't catch, I guess one of our recap shows when we were at Celebration, we did run into Kerry Jones, and he's just as intimidating in real life without the costume.
The whites of his eyes are truly that white.
Piercing. He saw every one of my sins for the last 40-something years. So thank you, Kerry Jones there. Okay, did you already go, Jonesy, with your uglies? How many of those have you given us already?
No, that was the first one, and just Laura. The only other really major one I had was the indestructible walls in the city. Like was just comical. Like,
well, inconsistently indestructible though, because some of them just like bowled right over. Somebody ran into it, and the whole wall came down.
Yeah, and again, this kind of goes back to my bad with the consistencies. Like sometimes it was just egregiously bad, to where it was like, "Oh, it was our last stand." I'm like, "No, you guys should have been obliterated like 5 minutes ago."
Yeah,
and it was just so. It put it to the point where it was just like, "Oh, come on," You're attacking an adobe hut, basically wall. It's made out of mud. Anyway, I'm just gonna stop.
All right. Well, I got a whole list of uglies. You ready?
No, I want to hear. Let's hear the rest of Lauren's.
Okay, yeah, let's hear Lauren's.
Because you'll be here all night.
I will be here all night.
That was my major ugly, but I actually, as I was thinking about uglies, I did have a question for y'all, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Oh boy.
Do you?
Here comes a Peli Motto one. I know it, Lauren. I know it.
How did you know?
Because I know you already. Go ahead. Make your piece.
Okay, Peli and Major Domo's ship. Good or ugly?
That is definitely in my ugly list. Like, I want nothing to do with that. What did she call them? Hey there, two tails or good looking or whatever?
She said nice. I think she
nice
said nice head tails.
Nice head tails.
And I forget what she calls him. Oh, I thought they were great. They were hilarious. I want them to be together.
Didn't she just call him handsome? I think that was all.
No, something like that. Yeah, she makes a comment about how handsome he is.
She compliments him in some way.
Yeah.
Right. Let me take Lauren's and go a step further then.
Oh, Lord.
I'm going to give you a choice, Albert. I may have given you this choice when we did this show.
Okay.
So the Major Domo and Peli,
Uh-huh.
or Peli and a Jawa.
Oh,
Oh, that's an
wow.
easy one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
I'll even give you a third one.
I
Just
don't need a third one. I can
Maz and
stop you right there. I would.
Maz and Chewbacca.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say
So,
originally.
so Maz and Chewbacca is about the equivalent of Peli and a Jawa, considering they're fuzzy. I would say I would go with Peli and Major Domo. As much
seem good
visually, I don't
together.
want to see that, but yeah.
I have the feeling she's going to drop back and probably resort back to some Jawa love.
Look, she propositions him too. Like, not only is she like onto him, she's already creeping him out, right? But then she like sticks her butt out. She puts the gun forward and she says, "Get in line, like come on behind me or whatever." And then they run off together. It's way, way too obvious that she's just like Maz Kanata. Okay, so here's go watch the scene again. You think I'm crazy? Go watch the scene again. Okay, so here are some of the uglies that I had. The twins, right?
The twins. Yeah.
They're so gross looking. Men's
By the way that
underwear in a galaxy far, far away. Like, I really have a problem with his underwear, with Boba Fett's underwear. Like, I don't understand that. It's just like a big samurai loincloth thing that he's wearing.
Looks back to diaper.
Yeah, the big diaper that he's wearing. Jonesy, Chrysanthemum's runoff still did not age well for me.
It's still the worst.
It's still the worst. Like him running off when he says you're free or whatever, and he just kind of shuffles off like, are you sure?
And again, they showed him 3 different angles running.
I know.
Like, one was too many, and then you gave us 3.
He gave us
like,
3.
Why? Why are you trying to embarrass this character?
If you read my jeditorial, I mentioned Rhodian fingers. And there's a scene in this series when that little Rhodian girl comes up and she puts her fingers there on the screen.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I
thought it was the digging in the sand, because that's where you could like really notice it.
That too. Yeah.
Oh, I will say this. The sand, like digging up the black melons in the sand, is absolutely ridiculous. Like, with that you could just dig for a minute and like, hey, I found one after 5 seconds. It's like, is that all it takes? Then why are the people of Tatooine so grumpy?
Right.
I think they taste bad is the problem.
Well, maybe.
That's why more people aren't getting into it.
Get used to it.
Yeah.
But if it's that really accessible.
Acquired taste. Yeah.
I got like 8 more here. So hold on.
Oh geez.
No, I'm kidding. I have like 5 more. But the chase scene, Kay just brought it up, the Vespa game. That chase scene, I had it in my bad, but the chase scene in general just isn't ugly for me. Peli Motto's eyebrows, or lack thereof, isn't ugly for me. Like, it, for whatever reason in this rewatch.
Wait, did you just freeze frame on Peli Motto scenes just to see the things you don't like about her?
Because I kept there was something that was confirmed in a
pause. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Albert.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Were you hoping that she got eaten by the Womp Rat?
I was hoping something would happen to her. I like the character, but she's like, when she and like the other one that I have in here is her losing her tooth. Like, that poor character. If she's not bad looking already, she's now lost a tooth. She has no eyebrow. She's got a perm. She's sleeping with Jawas because she can't. I mean, it's just a bad like life, and I hope things turn around for her.
She's upgraded from the Jawa. She has Major Domo now.
That's right.
Well, she says something in this series, all seriousness, that I never really caught on to, and I'm wondering if they're kind of setting this up. But she makes that comment to Mando about, like, I've never been off planet. Like, I'm a homegrown gal or something like that. And
She's a local gal.
Yeah. And I thought, I wonder if they're setting that up for her, like, for her character arc, as much as I think that's going to be silly.
She's going to be the lead character in Rangers of the New Republic.
Oh, there you go. She's going to slip right into where Cara Dune was supposed to be.
She's going to slip into something.
Yep. Let's see. I had Grogu's vertical leap as an ugly when he tells him to jump, and he like lifts off like, I don't know, half a centimeter off the ground. It looked weird. And then that poor baby getting zapped by the training remote. Like, who approved that?
Please tell me you have Grogu's like limp arm when he's running too.
No, I don't have
and
that.
Jumping. Dude, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. It's like the puppet broke and they didn't even care to fix it.
Yep.
Because it's just like,
we're over budget. Keep rolling. Keep filming. Don't stop
the
cameras.
Right.
I don't know. That might be all I had. I had some other ones, and I don't think I captured them, but that's probably enough. There was plenty. I'm sorry, they were mostly Peli Motto, but I just...
You're not that sorry.
No, not really. Albert is the mean girl of Star Wars franchise, going after the ugly but confident girl. What? That's not fair.
Peli Motto knows who she is, and she knows what she wants. She knows what she doesn't want, although she might relapse a little bit here and there.
The series would be very different. Like, her dynamic with Mando, I think, works. like all seriousness aside, like seriousness, I think it really works because you have Mando who's so like straight and narrow. He's by
Right.
his textbook. You know what you're going to get with him.
You need
Right?
that
He's not
counterpoint.
and like she is the absolute counter to him, and like I think it pushes him and helps him develop in ways that I don't think he's even aware of. And I'm probably reading too much into that or giving him too much credit, but I do like that dynamic when they're on screen together, and I love that whole bit that she does about talking about the N1 starfighter when she's trying to like talk him into it and really sell the positive of it all. I think she does an amazing job of that, and I think that's where her Amy Sedaris like really kind of has comes out as that character and sells it really well. But it's just
Better put that in your good column now
no, let's not go that far. I'm like a big fan
of
of Ripley.
of Peli Motto.
No, of Ripley from Aliens, and I know this is what her character was modeled after, and I'm like, it's just an atrocity. There you go. As you both stare at me with like questionable looks.
Why do you hate Star Wars, Albert?
I know that's exactly what we're going to talk about here. Is why do I hate Star Wars? Okay, so let's kind of wrap things up. Lauren, I'll start with you. So now, okay, so we've already kind of talked about the whole series now, but anything that you're looking forward to them exploring, either in let's just call it Book of Boba Fett 2, should it go there, or Mando season 3, or some other future series of some sort.
Well, in Book of Boba Fett 2, I mean, anything that's gonna give me more Fennec Shand, I'm excited for because she's awesome. I should have put her on my good.
Yeah,
She's
you should
great.
have. Yeah.
She
I
yeah,
had her
she
on
was
mine. We
like
got it covered. It counts.
yeah, she was like one of the shining stars of the first half of the season. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of her, seeing if she's I mean, I don't really know in what way because I'm not sure if Boba Fett's still gonna be a leader or not, but regardless, I think it'll be interesting to see what she does. And then for Mando season 3, I'm happy to see Grogu and Mando back together again. So, I mean, those are pretty straightforward things that I think we have to hope for.
Yeah. Jonesy, what about you?
Yeah, I hope we don't get a Book of Boba Fett number 2 because I don't know what story there is to tell. This one was a bit of a stretch, unfortunately. But with Mando season 3, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to pick up. So how this feeds into some of that, though, is interesting. Whether or not he goes back and recruits a Fennec Shand or a Boba Fett or even a Cobb Vanth. Those 3 characters seem to be a bit of a stretch in that way, but maybe they're becoming a bit of an extended family or people that they can rely on. But again, if you leave Tatooine, then does that create some other situation, or with Chrysanthemum leaving and going and doing all that too? I don't know. But again, it doesn't, for them to all leave doesn't make a lot of sense either. Even if they need people, it's a Mandalorian kind of issue. But again, we don't really know where Boba Fett sits on that line because he even asks, he asked Din Djarin at one point, do you believe all that bantha fodder? And he's like, yes. And he goes, well, okay, good. But of course, we've had Boba Fett say that he's not a Mandalorian and basically wants nothing to do with that culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really know where he stands to know why he would even be engaged with this, resurrection of Mandalore, because it means absolutely nothing to him, or at least we don't have any reason to believe it means something to him. So maybe that's how that would tie into Mandalorian season 3. I mean, again, the storylines from this make sense to fit into it, but the Boba Fett storylines don't really seem to jive very well. But Book of Boba Fett season 2, I don't really see what it would. There's no natural story to tell. I don't think, at least not one I'm interested in seeing, unfortunately.
So I want to come back to that one because I kind of want to end on that particular. So I've got some thoughts there. So first off, I think everything that was prophesized by the armor, right? When she's going on about, Bo-Katan and how, the sword was, what there was a whole thing in there where she was prophesying what was going to happen based on, what they believed. I think all of that was fascinating stuff. And I really think we're going to see a lot of that explored in our face, like visually. I mean, we already know that for a fact, right? This is where we got the only way to attune for his sins and removing the mask was to go down into the caverns of whatever the hell it was. And I think we're going to get to see that, right? Live action in season 3. I think they're setting that up. And we predicted they would probably do that. So kudos to us. So I'm really excited to see that. Grogu's relationship. I mean, as much as, again, this getting shoehorned, if you will, into the Book of Boba Fett, what it did is it slingshotted us past a lot of buildup that I know we talked about we want more of, but we were past it and we don't need to necessarily get into it. And what I mean by that is, okay, they're back together now. And Grogu now has some sense of control over his force. He's wearing armor. We don't know whether or not he has a lightsaber. I think in my head, I was thinking Luke came to his senses and just gave it to him and said, go protect yourself, kid. Right. But the potential there for that Grogu character and that relationship to continue on to that next phase that I think a lot of people were questioning whether or not that was the end. Once Luke came and picked him up, would we ever see the child again? Right. I think it's obvious now. They are a thing. They're going to be a thing. That is, Mando is with Grogu, and that's just the way it is. So seeing now them in this kind of next stage of the relationship, I'm looking forward to as well, whatever that looks like in season 3. I want to see potentially some of the things that Luke was teaching Grogu. I think there's a language barrier there that I don't know. It feels like we got to get past before we can really get into the nitty gritty of what is in Grogu's mind, unless there's somebody like Ahsoka there to translate or Mando. But like that whole thing about, balance and, the teachings that Luke had, I'd love to see that play off in some way in this next season. So that would be great. I want to go back to Cobb Vanth. I think that is unresolved. Unfortunately, to your point, and this kind of ties into the last piece of do we come back to Tatooine? Is there a Book of Boba Fett 2? I don't think there is either. Like, and I think they could easily just say we're done. That was the book. The book was, how did he get out of the Sarlacc pit? How did he become the character that we know him to be in Mando season 2? They've told that story, and at this point, they don't need to revisit that. If they wanted to, they could do it in another form. I don't necessarily need to be a TV show, but they could easily bring back Boba Fett into season 3. And here's where I'm going with this. So number one, again, this all plays into this larger crazy theory that I had since season 1 of The Mandalorian, where all of these different, quote, Mandalorians were going to come together and they would all be united in kind of what was prophesized in the Rebels, right? Whoever holds the dark saber is going to bring all the clans together. So I want to see that still happen. But for Boba Fett specifically, the fact that he's been given a lot of crap by a lot of people because he's not a Mandalorian. And we know from Din Djarin, it's not about the armor that you wear. It's not about what, you believe the faith is. It's like, it's a way of life. It's not necessarily, where you came from, what your origins were. We see that with Grogu. They brought him in as a foundling, and now he's considered part of the tribe. What I'm saying is, at some point in season 3, season 4, I would like for somebody like a Boba Fett to be a part of that group and be brought in. And even if he's not acknowledged by everybody immediately, he himself, because of what Mando's done in season 2 or season 3, he now feels like he is a Mandalorian. He's part of that tribe. And then same thing. So going back to Cobb Vanth, right? Cobb Vanth wore the armor. So he never really was, but he's had these relationships now with Mando and everything they went through in season 2, whatever is going to be coming in season 3. I would like for him to be like, I know it's a departure because he's so tied to his people, but the idea being that you could have people from all kinds of backgrounds that are, quote, Mandalorian, because it's more about the ideology, if you will, right? It's more about more about where you were, less about where you were born and more about who you are. Does that make sense? I want all that to come together. So that's how I would bring those in and tie those into it and kind of like overarching story. But that's probably a little ambitious. It's a creed. Thank you. Sorry, Dale. I was sitting there struggling with what the heck I was trying to say, but yeah, it's a creed. So I don't know. It feels like they laid that groundwork for a lot of these characters, but they could easily just say, no, that's not what we did, or skip it over and nothing would really change. But
yeah, and when we talked about this before, I think I'd thrown out there that if this was a Book of the Mandalorians or a Book of a Mandalorian or the Mandalorian, all of this would fit so much better. Like you could quit with the Book of Boba Fett and quit with the Mandalorian and just encapsulate it all as one big story. And these are all the pieces going on in the different chapters of an overall book. And to me, that would just make a lot more sense narratively, because in books, you do have little side jogs, right? You have side quests. You have these little stories that, these interludes, if you will. And they still kind of interweave with the story in a lot of ways. And I think that's how I view Book of Boba Fett, was that it was an interlude within. And Aftermath's actually a pretty good example, right? The way that Aftermath was written, the Cobb Vanth stuff really felt like that, right? It was a break. There was still some connectivity between all of it, but did you really need it in some ways? Maybe not. And so that's in a broader story. I like that Book of Boba Fett is there. I think it's kind of an important story to have overall because there were some really connected pieces. But I almost like everything rebranded, and we stopped differentiating between Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, in my head, I think that's the overall. I've been hung up on this in season 1, honestly, but it is. I want them to tell, and we talked about this, like the title of the Mandalore, right? That is a title that goes back to Legends. It goes back to the Old Republic. I think in Legends, Boba Fett had the title at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, and so it would be cool if they really were kind of moving towards that direction, and them calling the series The Mandalorian may be a way to kind of cut. Because I think if they had come out and said the series is called The Mandalore, I think there would be people like me that would immediately latch on and go, "Oh my God, they're telling the story of somebody coming back and reuniting every single Mandalorian person, tribe, clan, whatever it is." Calling it The Mandalorian, if they were going to go down that route, it's a better way of disguising that without necessarily, evoking the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, I like the title of The Mandalorian. Obviously, it's great.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
So we'll see.
Hey, there goes Jennifer agreeing with me again. That's 2 times in one night. I win.
Yeah, that's odd.
It is odd. This is not normal.
Oh, look at this. What we needed is Boba forgiving Mace for all that happened. Before all
Mace
that
is
happened.
dead.
He's not dead. He's coming back.
Yeah, they sure have been setting up force jumps a lot in High Republic.
Mm-hmm. Force jumping, force falling, all that. High Republic, it's there.
Yeah, they're setting it up, I think.
It's like saying you didn't see the head for Django. Does that mean he's not dead?
That's true.
Oh, there was a head in there for sure.
No,
it didn't fall
he held
out.
it up. Well, maybe it was just stuck. He still had the
It
chin
was
strap
stuck
on.
in there.
Which is more disturbing.
Wow. The show's gotten darker since Lauren came on. I'm not sure what that says.
Well, okay, to change the subject, I will say that in terms of how Din is going to function with the rest of the Mandalorians, I almost didn't really know what to think about that, because at the end of season 2 of Mando, when he takes his helmet off, I thought that we were going to see him turning away from that religion, and after these 3 episodes in Book of Boba Fett, he seems like he wants to go redeem himself. So I kind of don't know what direction he's going to end up going in once we get to Mando season 3.
Oh, I have a whole theory that I'd like to share with you at this time that will explain all of that. Okay, well, we'll end the episode there. Since they both jumped on that immediately.
I said go.
No. Oh, did you? I didn't hear that. I thought you. I saw you both look at the time and go, "Holy crap! It's 2 hours, and you let this guy go for another hour." No. All right.
I've learned to sleep with my eyes open.
Jonesy just tunes out. All right. Did we talk about Thundercat? We did. All right. I think we covered everything then. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess final thoughts for me, and then I'll pass it over to you, Jonesy. I think I enjoyed the series more than I thought I was going to. Having watched Andor and even Kenobi, like we haven't really talked about Kenobi much and compared it, but I thought Kenobi was probably a better series than this one. For all of the bads that I had with this series, I felt like there was way more goods, and there was a lot of, even though there were a lot of things I would agree that were just thrown at us, and we just kind of had to take it face value and move on. There was a lot that was explored, and so I don't know. In some ways, that I give that credit as well. But it didn't hold up as badly as I thought it was. And at the end of the day, I hate to use this because it sounds so like cliche. It was just fun to watch. Like, it was really fun to watch all these characters on screen and some of the over the top testosterone that was on display with the Rancor and that whole last battle scene. I mean, I don't know. It felt good to be a kid again, just watching Star Wars and not really taking things so deep and so seriously as maybe I did with Andor, but they're not mutually exclusive. I think I can have both of them. They're just, depending on how I feel. So what about you?
Yeah, it's a good summary. I agree. I think overall I enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to. Actually, I was not really looking forward to this assignment, to be honest with you, but it worked. I mean, the show worked well enough, I think. And there were definitely a lot of good places. It was a good adventure, I guess, a bit of a sidebar. Again, consistencies were unfortunate, though. I think just the lack of focus on the show just dragged it down. And if there would have been something else there, but again, we'll see what Mandalorian season 3 does to maybe reintegrate Book of Boba Fett into that a little bit in some way, and maybe that will redeem it to when we look back on this again, it's like, oh man, I'm glad we had this set up because that makes a lot more sense. I'm not really holding my breath on that one, but I think overall, I agree with your assessment of it. It was a fun show. It was a good show. It's one I would recommend to people who are curious about what happened to Book of Boba Fett, or what happened to Boba Fett rather, after Return of the Jedi, if they're really curious about what happened, or if they really want to have a great setup for Mandalorian season 3. And like you said, if they just want to see a Rancor, rampaging through the streets, got a lot of that, and with droids who can't pierce a wall. But yeah, overall better than what I had remembered, and I would still somewhat recommend this every once in a while to some people. Yeah.
All right, Lauren, final thoughts on this series?
Yeah, I agree with y'all about it was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it. There were some moments that did make it really enjoyable, like the Tuscans and the Mando episodes. For me, the writing issues were more glaring watching them all in a row like that. But regardless of that, I do think that for anyone that's interested in Mando season 3, they're pretty much gonna have to go watch this. So
That's a good point. This is almost required, I think. Yeah,
It
at
really
least those 2
is,
episodes are required watching for season 3. So
yeah, that's the amusing part. You could probably watch those and not watch anything else, and you're totally fine.
the last 3 episodes, yeah. I mean, you'd lose out on the Tuscan piece, but you'd still have questions about how did he get here. But yeah, I mean, the last 3 episodes wrap pretty much everything up for you and get you set up for whatever comes next. So.
Yeah, and you get all the important stuff with Peli Motto.
All right. Don't. Guys are crazy. Oh, man. All right. I have not updated the credits, but before we get out of here, Jonesy, you got any shout outs tonight for us?
No, Lauren said she was doing shout outs.
Oh, okay. Lauren.
no, I did not.
Oh,
He's
sorry.
trying to make me stressed.
No, yeah. So again, if you're listening to this, we would welcome you to come out to the live stream so you could be part of the chat. We had a really awesome chat tonight. Steph, Jonathan, Sky, Dale, JJ Skywalker, Rob, Jorge, Jennifer, and KG or KG. I'm guessing it's KG. But no, awesome chat out there all night long, really consistent. So it was a lot of fun putting those up on screen. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. Again, we're just a few subscribers away from 1,000. It'd be really cool if we could get there. And so if you'd like to check it out, we would love to have you over there. The website now also points and grabs a lot of that stuff, so you'll know when our show's there. So if you're just going out to the website, CantinaCast.com, you'll find all that stuff out there. And again, remember, we got Lauren's review of Convergence. We know she's working on some other stuff for us, Request with Hidden City. Dante released a new Jedi tutorials today, talking about the consistencies between the Rebellion and Andor. Something a little interesting there. So CantinaCast.com, go check that out. It's a great read. And I meant to slip that in the show notes up top, but yeah, we released that earlier today.
Yeah, and I've got it up on the screen, CantinaCast.com/Jeditorials, if you want to go out there and read these. I don't know, they're pretty quick reads, 1,000 words-ish, around that thing. So about 5 minutes if you want to take a look at it. But another way to kind of interact with some of our staff and get some different points of view on some things, some serious, some not so serious. Just depends on what you're looking for. All right. Anything else, Jonesy, before we get out of here?
Nope, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Lauren, you got anything?
Nope. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, we've got another Patreon show. I think we're going to try to get that tomorrow. So that'll be our look back at 2023. Just kind of wax, a couple 3-4 hours on how we felt like 2022. Sorry. Yeah. My goodness. 2022. We'll be looking.
Are you from the future, Albert?
I am from the future. I have seen the Peli Motto footage in season 3, and it's not worth watching.
So that means it's awesome.
Yeah, it means it's awesome. But yes, we'll be back with the Patreon episode this weekend talking about 2022, looking back on everything that was released, whether it was a novel, book, television, movie. Just kidding. No movies. But there was quite a bit.
I added probably like 10 more things in there just on my own.
Oh, good. Because I hadn't finished the list, honestly. But yes, there's a lot of stuff that's in there. And then maybe we'll take a look at some of the stuff that's more obvious coming up in 2023. Whether that's Skeleton Crew, there's maybe the Alkalite, season 3 of Mando. We've got
the what?
Season 3 of Mando?
No.
The Alkalite.
The
Alkalite?
Yeah. ALCOL.
I do it too. I say the same.
It's hard.
The alcohololite?
English is my second language. I'm not sure if you
guys
That is
not.
That.
Well, yeah, Michigander is the first
I'm
one.
from Michigan, which is my primary language. Okay.
Right.
All right. That's enough. I'll update the credits here, hopefully for the next show. But until then, we'll see you there.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.